Yeah. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Calaveras County Board of Supervisors, our regular meeting of December 16, 2014. We called the meeting to order this morning at 8 o'clock. We had no public comments. We went into closed session. Item number 1, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code 54957, Public Works Director. We took no action on this item. Item number 2, I excused myself, and so I'll defer to Vice Chair Edson on number 2.
So item number 2 on a 4-0 vote, Supervisor Pawnee was not present. The board directed staff to initiate an action. The defendants and other particulars will be disclosed upon request once the action has finally commenced. That's it.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to ask that we stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we don't have any formal announcements this morning, and I know it's folks are standing. There are seats in the audience. If anyone wants to come forward and take a seat, they may. Okay, into our agenda, we have recognition and acknowledgments. Item number 3, coming from the Administrative Office and Board, we have a proclamation recognizing Marita Callaway for her 21 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County. We have a resolution or proclamation here I'd like to read. And, I must say before I go into this that Marita has asked that basically her request that there not be any fanfare, you might say, after she departs after 21 years of service. So this is a very difficult time as one is leaving who has been here for such a time and has brought so much to the citizens of Calaveras County. So I'm going to take a few moments to read this proclamation, and we also trying to make it a little bit lighthearted. So, Marita, bear with me. We're going to let Marita sit through this one. So we have a proclamation to share, and I'm going to read it. And I have to read it from here because what it's put on is a little hard to read. So most of you who know Marita know that she's always carrying a lot of stuff as her supervisor. So instead of getting her the traditional wall plaque, put it on for bag. Now she can carry fun stuff in her bag instead of all this board stuff. So we have a proclamation recognizing Marita Callaway's 21 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County. Whereas Marita Callaway was elected to serve the residents of Calaveras County in 1993 as a representative of District 3. Whereas Marita has been involved in many issues within her district, the county, and the state, serving on many boards such as CSAC and RCRC, and is always the first to champion a cause, no matter how difficult the situation may be. Whereas Marita's intricate knowledge of the Highway 4 corridor has helped many of her constituents, whether it be regarding road maintenance or snow removal matters, and whereas her involvement support of animal services, Central Sierra Child Support, Area 12 Agency on Aging, and the libraries continue to prove her love of the community. And whereas Marita's attention to detail was constantly illustrated by her suggestions, such as never start a letter with fear, and to never sign a letter with sincerity, respectfully, or any other cliche. And whereas Marita always insisted that when writing a letter, we never use a sentence like, please find enclosed, because the recipient can clearly see that something has been enclosed, making it a redundant sentence. And whereas Maria has always been willing to try new things, even in iPad, and whereas Maria has always taken the time to support health and social issues with great compassion and empathy, oftentimes sharing a hug or a tear, but most importantly, her heart. Now be it resolved that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors recognizes Maria for her unwavering spirit and dedication during her 20 years of service. Pretty soon I'll call for a roll call, but there's a few more things I'd like to share with Maria. So one of Maria's love has always been, of course, her animal services. And so it's very fitting today that we have that on the agenda as we're moving forward with the Animal Services Project. But also when I first met Maria, she told me all about the roads in District 3. The boundaries of District 3 have changed for pretty much the highway border of District 3. So the public works staff has been very kind in presenting some things today. So Maria can still be involved in the road issues in District 3 because as most of us who live up and down Highway 4 know that those issues probably will never go away unless we have a rainfall of money coming our way. So first, we have the old column. They want it back if they continue to have it. And then, when she's driving up and down the road, she'll have a jacket to put on. So we make sure that we all see her. And a little different light now. And probably one of the funnest things, I think.
You didn't take it.
Probably.
I think you can work with it.
But perhaps one of the things that she'll hang most proudly on her wall is the hard hat. So you'll enjoy that. Then we have that. Now, at this point, would anybody like to make any public comments before we take the vote?
No.
My goodness, look at this.
I would. I'm Joyce Teckle from Burson. I've been around a long time, and I just want to thank Marita for coming down to our district and taking the time to understand us and understand our issues. She always thought of the whole county, not just her district, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
No fanfare. Is this Thunderbird? I remember sitting on the streets of San Francisco one New Year's Eve on the curb, thinking something has to back.
It'll come back to you. It's like riding a bicycle.
I'm here from all the Alamos. Thanks. You've just been superb. We're really going to miss you, and especially the animals, I'll tell you. You've just been a godsend to them. They really appreciate all your work, and I couldn't bring them all today, but oh well.
Well, remember Dixie?
Yes, we remember Dixie.
One of the board's finer moments. Thank you.
Marty Crane, Valley Springs. I just wanted to say thank you, Marita. I came here in 91, and that was just a couple years before you started on this board. So everything I know about County of Calaveras government, I've watched. You've been a mentor for everybody. And I just want to point out that I so appreciated that while we all have our special things that tug at our heartstrings, such as the animals and public safety and stuff, you always governed with a fiscal responsibility. And I so appreciate that, and I hope that we've all learned from that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I love your stylish jacket. I have one just like it.
Any other comments?
Al Scala Taxpayer
You're supposed to
Association.
tell the truth, Al.
Now, Marita, I think probably the most important thing that a person can have in public service is integrity. And you have that, and we appreciate that. And we also appreciate those times when you were correct.
As in plural.
Any other comments?
Thank you all.
Okay, I just want to take some closing remarks. I've had the opportunity probably about 1985 or so when I returned to Calaveras County from college, and was very involved in the Chamber of Commerce, and I first met Maria. At that point, she, I believe, was probably with PG&E, and we were having a Chamber of Commerce meeting there, and she was kind enough to host it. And one of the things I saw is that she had her daughter there. And many times you saw Maria involved in the community, she had her daughter with her. And I learned later on, as I became a mother and had 2 small children, that if you want to be involved in things, you just kind of had to pack the family and go. And I can remember having Maria and seeing Maria at that time in life with her child, and having her at meetings, and she continued to be involved both in her community and later in politics. And that really has served to me somewhat as a role model, that, you know, no matter what you're doing in life, whether you're having children or not, that you can still be involved and you can get involved. And that's always something that has stayed with me throughout my career, and remembering that about Marita. The other thing I reflect back on is when I was with the City of Angels and on the City Council. And there were some rough periods between the city and the county. And I can remember going head-to-head, toe-to-toe with some of the board of supervisors at the time and being on the City Council. And Marita and I didn't always agree on a particular situation, but it was always said and done. There was always that common respect for each other and our opinions and our beliefs. And that is something that not many people can hold on to. And that's something that I've always admired about Rita and watching her and her service of 21 years in the county. She's always done it with a very strong fiscal philosophy, has always tried to look at the bigger picture for Calaveras County and not only representing her district, but thinking big. And beyond that, she's been able to carry and protect in some ways, and also put Calaveras County on the map in some ways with both our regional and state and federal agencies. And for that, we are truly saying thank you, and we're honored, and we wish you the best of luck as you go through your next phase in life. So with that, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second, I have a motion by Supervisor Spellman, second by Supervisor Wright, to approve the proclamation recognizing Marita Callaway for 21 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 5-0. Rita, would you like to say anything at this point?
Before you do, can I? Please?
Yeah.
All right. So we didn't get a chance to speak, but I want to say something. So I remember when I first took office, I went to the new supervisors workshop that was done by CSAC down in Long Beach, and Maria was there. And I guess she wanted to get to know me. So she grabbed a hold of me and right away took me out to dinner, and we had a good conversation. It was the beginning of our work relationship, and so she was just probably trying to figure out where the heck I stood on things. I feel that Rita and I personally have worked so well together. One thing I know and appreciate about her is I know exactly where she stands. So she doesn't waver on that. You may not like it a lot of times, but you know exactly where she stood. Didn't have to worry about this in the round thing because she didn't do that. So I got to tell you that I learned a lot from you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the resolution for Supervisor Spellman. So those are 21 years of service. We had 4 years of service. And as Supervisor Spellman has often said that, in that particular area of the county, there seems to be a lot of one-time supervisors. And I guess we're trying to still figure that out. But anyway, we have a resolution for Supervisor Spellman, which I'd like to read, and a few comments as well. So, proclamation recognizing Darren Spellman's 4 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County. Whereas Darren was elected to serve as District 5 Supervisor in 2010, attending his first meetings as Supervisor on January 4th, 2011. Whereas throughout this term, Darren grew on his experience as an educator, realtor, and businessman to make decisions benefiting the residents of his district and the county. And whereas his compassion and belief in doing the right thing sometimes resulted in lively discussions during board meetings. Whereas Darren took the time to research matters presented to the board and was always looking for ways to increase revenue while trying to be eco-friendly. And whereas Darren took great pride in serving the residents of his district as well as the entire county. Now be it resolved that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors recognizes Darren Spellman for his 4 years of service to the Calaveras County. Before I take a vote, are there any public comments?
Like about the first day he walked into board with his waiter, about how we had to swear him in separately than anybody else. No, I can't think of any. Sometimes he would really surprise me, like the vote for the green thing where Tuffanelli and Tryon voted no.
Earth Day?
Earth Day.
Yeah.
And you brought it on. I thought, whoa, this guy's all right. That was one thing.
Sometimes when people leave, we get sad. Sometimes we get mad. Sometimes we're glad. I won't say any more.
Any other? Okay, well, I'm going to add. Oh,
Supervisor Spellman, I have to say, all my years here, I've never seen a supervisor so supportive of law enforcement as you have been. I hate to see you go, and I wish you well in your next endeavor. Thank you very, very much on behalf of the whole department. Thank you.
Joe Kelly, Mr. Spellman, even though we've had our differences, whether they be politically or mindset, ideology, or whatever, I wish you well in your future, sir. God bless.
any other public comments? Okay. Well, one of the things Darren brought to me is not having known Darren prior to coming onto the board, just in the last couple of years, was his passion to always represent his district and to acknowledge what his district didn't have or did have, but more importantly, what it didn't have. And one of the things I heard over and over again was the library. And then we heard about the transit and looking at bus routes. And of course, we heard road issues always, and a couple of other projects. But most importantly, what I always heard him say was recognizing the Constitution and people's rights. And I think that's pretty important because I find that sometimes people will forget about that. And he was one who was always talking about that and trying to demonstrate that. So I'm leaving you with a challenge. Because only you've been serving for 4 years, but I find most times you can do more behind the scenes to get something done than you can sitting in this chair. So I have a bag of books for you. And your challenge is to bring a library to your end of the district.
Oh,
Or something similar.
challenging subject.
So enjoy the bag of books. See what you can do behind the scenes and keep in touch. All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to approve the proclamation recognizing Darren Spellman's 4 years of service to the residents of Calaveras County. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
So, I'd just like to say to both Marita and Darren, it's been really the most interesting 2 years I've had in my life. You guys are both two unique individuals, and I'll miss sitting next to you and being part of this board. And I just look forward to working with you on any issues that come forward. It's been really great. You guys are good people, and the community should really recognize how challenging this job is. And you guys have both done a good job. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Okay, item number 3 on our agenda. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Marita took a pass on her. She
Okay.
wants to, but having served 1/5 the time as she is, I'm not quite as emotional. I can understand her state, had I been here 5 times as long. So, but I just wanted to make sure to take the opportunity the last time to make at least a few comments and thanks to people. First of all, Chair Ponte mentioned the Constitution and my passion for it. And I just want to remind the body of people assembled today and those who might be viewing it in other places that the Constitution is there to protect all people regardless of their political philosophies. One of the things that we were able to accomplish here during my 4-year term, along with my fellow supervisors, is to bring back night meetings. They happen about once a quarter on the 5th Tuesday evening. This was brought actually by myself and a gentleman who's a good friend of mine who will tell you straight to your face that he's a very liberal, socialist, and Buddhist. So he's definitely not somebody who would fall into the category of any right-wing radical.
Like you?
I'm not saying that I'm that, no. Some people have termed me as such, but I don't wear that label. I'm an individual with a brain to think. So, not that right-wingers don't have brains, but I don't want to be categorized. So, my friend who is an educator, he's not here because he's overseas right now. He and I worked together on that along with former Supervisor Walensky and others to bring this to fruition, because under the Constitution and amendments to the Constitution, people have a right to redress. They have a right to approach their elected officials and to be heard. That's an awful difficult thing to do for people who work 9 to 5. To a meeting on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., they'd have to take a day off work, and that's not really allowing them access to the government, in my opinion. So for the people who voted for that and the board that's seated today that continues that process that we got passed, which is to have a night meeting once a quarter, to be able to offer the opportunity for folks who work during the day to come if they want to and say what they will to us, to our faces, not just in an email, I think is a huge thing in terms of transparency and ability to approach the elected officials that govern this county. And I'm very proud of that and many other things that we've been able to accomplish. And that right there is a constitutional named right, it affects all. So I'm going to try to go down my list here semi-quickly. First of all, I'd never be here in this chair if it weren't for a lot of people, not the least of which is Mr. John Hamilton and his lovely partner, Kim, at thepinetree.net. There were people that cast aspersions about my former employment, and without his website, which he let me post job evaluations from my former past job that proved the accusations were wrong, I doubt very seriously that I ever would have been elected. People have a right to free speech, to say what they want, regardless of whether it's true or not, especially when it comes to public officials. However, without the media, both Mr. Hamilton at the Pine Tree, and I also want to thank the staff, both past and present, at the Calaveras Enterprise for being our county's newspaper of record and covering the news that matters so much to our local political process. A lot of people cover stories about, fluffy animals and 5K runs and those type of things like that. But the Calaveras Enterprise is the paper of record the source for people in this county to be able to obtain political information as well as, fun stories. So for that, I thank them. I think, especially Mr. Aldridge, who is the owner of the paper, and I know it's a difficult business to be in this day and age, but I appreciate his commitment to making sure the news gets made available to the general populace of this county. I'd also like to thank all the citizens in Calaveras County who elected me and put their trust in me as a representative. I'd like to thank all my colleagues, both past and present, who, regardless of our personal political philosophies or differences, have demonstrated a clear common thread, which is our commitment to better the lives of the citizens here in Calaveras County. I don't think anybody would argue, regardless of political preference or ideology, that any of the supervisors, both now or in the past, have arguably fought for the betterment of the lives of the citizens that live here in the county. Albeit sometimes we have different emphasis on how we would spend the money or what programs we would finance to better the lives. I think that nevertheless, none of these people are here to subvert the system. They were here to try to make it better in whatever means they had possible to them. And last, I would say that I'm very thankful for my lovely wife, who can't be here because she's at work teaching children. She's a high school teacher. It's a difficult thing for an elected official, but it's also difficult for their partner or their spouse, their family. So, in her absence, she can watch it on video later, I guess, maybe. I'd like her to know as well that I'm very thankful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have on item number 5, brought to us from the Sheriff's Department, recognizing David Barker for his 30 years of service to Calaveras County. So David is here, and we have...
No, Dave, you are too.
Okay. All right, David, let's go.
Yeah.
So David and I have known each other for, since high school, many, many moons. So it has been a wonderful opportunity to be here today to recognize Dave for his 30 years of service to the Sheriff's Department of Calaveras County, but many, many years beyond that to his service to his citizens of Calaveras County, to his neighbors, to his family. He has lived and breathed Calaveras County for many, many years or so. It's quite an honor today to be here to report Sheriff that recognize. No, high school. So, anyway, it's a great time to recognize David in his 30 years of service. So the board has a proclamation here for you. I'd like to read it. Whereas David Barker started his public safety career in Calaveras County on April 20th, 1984, 2 years after graduating from high school, and was employed as follows. He was an extra hire Marine Safety Officer until September 5th, 1984. He then was an extra hire deputy for the fair in 1984. He was assigned as extra hire deputy on June 5th, 1985 to September 2nd, 1987, doing patrol security in the Wilseyville area. Your neck of the woods, Supervisor Wright. He became a correctional officer on September 5th, 1984, followed by a promotion to the jail training officer, corporal, January 1st, 1996. And on September 8th, September keeps ringing a bell for you, huh? September 8, 2003, he was promoted to correctional sergeant. Whereas during his employment with Calaveras County Jail, David Barker has risen to every challenge presented to him, including keeping all required STC training in order. This has resulted in successful audits during his tenure as the training coordinator. Whereas David Barker has been resolute, determined, and faithful in his discharge of his duties, ensuring the safety of both citizens and inmates. Whereas David Barker has helped create a friendly and successful department. So before we take the vote, I think there's some public comments and perhaps some recognitions from your peers here.
When I first came to work here as a reserve officer at Calaveras County by 1985, I also then became extra hire correctional officer in the jail. And that's when I first met Sergeant Barker. Him and I hit it off very well. We worked a lot of night shifts together and had a lot of good times. That's back when we just had a few people in the jail, mostly guys doing drunk public beats and drunk driving and everything else. Back then, the doctors had them all up on batting, so they're just lethargic around all the time. They never bothered anybody, That's before we got into the heavy drink users and that kind of thing. So, we kind of got together. We used to go out and we used to have a CCC program. Without, you forget a lot of stuff. CCC program out there in Springfield City, and Dave and I go up there on our days off and print these new kids, making $20 an hour. That was big bucks. Back then we only make about $7 an hour. And then we go over there and they feed us lunch and everything else. And anything I really know how to figure out very well with the old roll type. And then became full-time when I came back as their jail commander. Dave had the STC program where he made sure everybody had their training and everything else. And I think as long as I've known Dave, whenever he had money and everything out, he was 100% in compliance. And I used to always get raving remarks from the back end of the Board of Corrections, saying how great Dave's paperwork was, everything was in order and everything else. And I was always very proud of him. And I really hate to see him go, because he got to the point where like one of the last ones go out of here. Anyways, I'm going to miss him, and I wish him well. Wherever he ends up at, Montana or up in the Rocky Mountains or something. Wherever the wind blows. Thank you very much.
Well, I am hoping that Dave ends up in Montana. So I'll go visit him and go hunt. I've known Dave all my life. We used to live together or next to each other in Avery and from grammar school. And I too went to Bret Harte, and I've been or known Dave, and now over the last 8 years, going on my 9th year, I've been the bureau commander in the jail. And I've had the honor of working with him and seeing him, and to the best of my knowledge, he's the second guy or second person at our sheriff's office that's worked a full 30 years inside of custody. So that itself, and custody being a thankful or thankless job as it is, what he's done in custody and dealt with those inmates over the last 30 years, he's done a great service to the citizens of the county. And I will truly, truly miss Dave, but I do know our friendship will continue. And Dave, I do thank you so much.
I don't know, I put this for you. It says, Sergeant David Barker, with the great honor and recognition for 30 years of loyal and dedicated service to the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, April 20th, 1984 to December 16th, 2014, from yours truly. Retirement, beginning of a new chapter of life. These are the baby boomers come from you.
And he's finally paroled.
Any public comments before we call for the vote?
I don't think I should. Give me cold. The easy one.
I will. I've known your wife for a long time. You have excellent taste in women. Thank you for your service, Dave. God bless you.
Everybody grew up in the county.
I can't take this to work.
I'll entertain a motion recognizing Mr. Gill's 30 years of service.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson. Proclamation recognizing David Barker's 30 years of service to Calaveras County. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Best of luck to you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Didn't know that about you, though. Black heart, huh?
Oh, yeah. But hey, just so everybody knows, my girls went to Calaveras. Beautiful.
Okay, item number 6, coming from the Administrative Office, is adopting a proclamation recognizing the John Kautz family for their gift of the Ebbets Pass Veterans Memorial Park. Marita, do you have this?
Yes, this resolution is being presented by the board to the Kautz family through the auspices of the Ebbets Pass Veterans Memorial District. The Kautzes and the veterans are not here today. They are having a special dinner for the Kautzes in January, and this will be part of a plaque with pictures that the veterans are putting together. In essence, we're thanking the Kautz family for the work that they did and for the donation they made to the community of the large bronze statue in the park in Murphy's. There's a setting with picnic tables, benches, landscaping, a new memorial wall. So if any of you are veterans or have veterans in your family, you might see if we can get their names on the wall. They can be living. They provided the financing and the manpower to create the memorial park. It was one of those things when they were building it and I was watching them, I did not ask if they had a permit. It was one of those things you just didn't want to know. But it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful place for veterans to go and members of the community. And I've noticed that veterans from other areas outside of Calaveras are coming to the memorial park. So this will be a tribute to them on behalf of the Ebbets Pass Veterans District, and I'm proud that the board can be part of that process. Based on that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this resolution.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway and second by Supervisor Spellman to adopt the proclamation recognizing the John Kautz family for their gift of the Ebbets Pass Veterans Memorial Park. Any public comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to our public comment section of the agenda. This is for any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. It is not posted on the consent or regular agenda, may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any similar matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30 minutes allotted time period, the board may immediately move on to the consent agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the regular agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. So at this point, this is a public comment period. We'll allow for 3 minutes per person. And I will make a side note that this is your probably last opportunity to make a public comment without a supervisor responding. So with that, we'll open it up to public comment period.
Good morning. I'm Pat Murphy from Mountain Valley EMS Agency, and with me today is Brian Dixon. He's retired Assistant Chief from Ebbets Pass Fire District, and we wanted to just talk to you for a couple minutes about the Advanced EMT program.
Basically, the Advanced EMT program is a program which Dignity Mark Twain Medical Center is going to be sponsoring to train responders, current EMT1s, and they're going to give them a limited amount of advanced life support paramedic stuff that can be done. You'll be given some stuff for allergic reactions, nitro and aspirin for heart attacks, the ability to start IVs. And distributed to all you folks already is a PowerPoint that we hope to use to educate fire boards and also the responding firefighters so they can learn what this program is all about. And in a nutshell, basically, it's an 80-hour classroom process. It's going to be on Wednesday nights and Saturdays over at Mark Twain, followed by 40 hours of hospital time where you practice your skills in front of nurses and docs in the emergency department, and then a field internship. Upon completion of that, there's the usual testing and certification process. Once you're established and the individual agencies decide they're going to go to the advanced CMT level, it's an opportunity for our volunteer companies and our part-paid career staff departments in the county to get some advanced life support to their citizens. It's seamless, basically, when whoever the transport provider is, American Legion or Ebbets Pass, whoever ambulance gets there following them up, the patient will be transported on, and the items will get restocked by the transport agency, so there's no cost to the district as far as the medical supplies. Also, Mark Twain has, and Pat's got a little more information about this, but there are some grants out there, and the tuition and the startup costs are going to be covered by those grants. You want to talk about those?
Sure. Mark Twain Medical Center, the healthcare district, is sponsoring the students so that they can attend without any cost to themselves, and they will pay the instructors and everything. Also, the startup costs for the district, as far as this extra equipment of the different specialized medical supplies and things like that, has been covered by HPP grant. So virtually there's no startup cost for an agency to participate in this program.
30 seconds.
Pardon?
30 seconds.
Thank you. The biggest problem right now is that we are lacking applications from the fire districts. We had to postpone the starting date for the class because we only had 9 applicants. We're shooting for 20, and we're just hoping that the agencies will participate in the program. Anything else?
No. So, and right now, the final filing date to applications?
January 9th is the final filing date.
So please pass the word along.
Yes.
Thank you.
I did have one more thing. Mountain Valley was able to negotiate a deal with 3 air ambulances and American Legion ambulance for a membership program that's now available at the office here in San Andreas on Highway 49 across from the post office. The membership's available for CalStar, REACH, PHI, and American Legion ambulance, a combined membership for $190 for the year that covers the whole family. So we were able to negotiate that, and that's now available.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to thank Supervisor Callaway for her years of service and her tutelage along the way.
You're just saying that because we go back a long way.
Back a very long way. We go back to when we were in the Bay Area.
Ooh. Not Red Heart High School, huh? Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any items the board wishes to remove from consent? Any items from staff?
Number 11.
Number 11. Any other Any public wish to remove an item?
10, please.
Number 10. Okay, we have on the consent agenda items number 10 and 11 have been removed. I'll take a motion for the remainder of consent.
Second. I make a motion. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Spellman to approve the balance of consent agenda minus 10 and 11. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. Regular agenda, we have item number 18 brought to us from Animal... Excuse me. I wanted to pull it, get rid of it altogether. Excuse me. Number 10. Number 10 is coming from the Administrative Office, appointment of applicants to serve on Planning Commission representing Districts 1, 2, and 4 for 2015. The question?
Who were the applicants that are being appointed, please?
Well, Go ahead, Diane.
The applicants for appointment are District 1, Ted Ayred, District 2, Fawn McLaughlin, and District 4, Kelly Wooster. They all are currently serving on the Planning Commission.
Okay, any further comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion on item number 10.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to appoint of applicants to serve on the Planning Commission representing Districts 1, 2, and 4 for 2015. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 11, Administrative Office. Shirley, can you?
Certainly. Number 11 was authorizing the board chair to sign letters to Congressman Tom McClintock and Senators Feinstein and Boxer in support of fully funding the Payment in Lieu of Tax, or PILT, and the Secure Rural Schools reauthorization. Over the weekend, or this recent week, Congress passed and sent to the President a bill that will bring total funding for PILT to $442 million, which is a little higher than last year's funding of $436 million. And so the letters are no longer applicable for that. And the Administrative Office will return in January with a resolution in support of reauthorization of the Secure Rural Schools Act for the board to act on at that time.
Okay, so no action taken on this item. Okay, on to the regular agenda. We have item number 18 from Animal Services. Approve the initial study, mitigated negative declaration adopting CEQA findings and improving the mitigation monitoring program for development of the Calaveras County Animal Services Center project consisting of 6.93 acres of Calaveras County owned property. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Brian Moss, Environmental Management. This has been a long ride. This CEQA document that we worked on took about a year and a half to get through for the 6.93 acres, resulting in a mitigated negative declaration for the property. As part of this this packet, we are looking to approve the resolution of the mitigated neg deck for the Animal Services Project, CEQA findings and mitigation. And the second part of that is approving the resolution mitigated negative declaration for the Calaveras County Animal Services Project mitigation monitoring programs. That's attachment A and B. So with that said, again, it's been a long project. We're very happy to be here. The county actually took care of the actual initial study, and I have to thank both the Administrative Office for stepping up and helping us with and the county funding that minimal cost study, and also for the Planning Department for stepping up and really working hard on this document as well. So thank you so much.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Item number 18. Supervisor Spellman.
So, as soon as we walk out of the room and we vote to approve this, I'm going to get on the horn to the Humane Society upper level people, and you had the commitment to build that thing yesterday.
The upper level Humane Society is here, along with Friends of Calaveras Animal Services, along with the volunteers that help us as well. So
Well, upper level, I mean like out of the area, big shots, decision maker people. I know all the local people have been going on for before I was born.
This is a very, very big step for animal services and a very positive one. So I really very much appreciate the support.
Good.
Okay, any other board comments? Supervisor?
I have to compliment Brian. He took this on unwillingly, thanks to our former CAO, Jeannie Boyce, who's here.
Yes, that would be true.
We were all in a room at the airport, I think. I can't remember. Oh, no, was it a public health building over near the pizza place? And Brian's the only one that didn't talk. So he got it.
Let's get it, Brian.
And Brian, you've really done a wonderful job with the shelter and finally getting this through. I truly compliment you in pushing this forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
I'd like to say thanks to Brian and his staff and Humane Society for working so well together with Brian's staff. It's a pretty big project, and I've been up there several times, and there's little improvements to try to always make it a little bit better, but this is going to be huge. And finally, a permanent situation, which is the most important thing, I think. So thanks for pushing it as hard as you've been pushing it, and I am so glad to see it something finally start moving. It's really great, so I appreciate that.
I would echo that, as well as I think this is one of those success stories of a good public-private partnership, not only in the past but going towards the future here with this particular project. So thank you. Any public comments at this time on item number 18? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, approving the initial study mitigated negative declaration, adopting CEQA findings, and approving the mitigation monitoring program for development of the Calaveras County Animal Services Center project, consisting of 6.93 acres of Calaveras County-owned property. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Now the pit bulls will be off my back.
Item number 19, again brought to us from Animal Services, adopting a resolution dedicating 6.93 acres of Calaveras County-owned property for the development of the Calaveras County Animal Services Center, as shown on Exhibits A and B. Brian, do you want to provide an overview of this?
Well, the real overview of this was we looked at multiple sites. As a matter of fact, back when Jeannie was here, I think that's how I got on this committee somehow. And some of those sites included Highway 4 at Vallecito Road. We looked at Government Center below the library. We looked at the CCWD property over here, which is 15 or 17 acres. I can't remember right now. And there were some options that we really considered, the board considered, especially the Highway 4 site. In the meantime, the Justice Center came to completion, and the Sheriff's Office had actually worked on building some trails, dog trails, on this property adjacent to Animal Services and adjacent to the court's property. So when we got that, I kind of looked at that and went, is there any reason we can't look at this? And so the long story very short is, yes, it was very feasible. And so what's interesting is even though nothing is happening there as far as the building is concerned. CAL FIRE, courtesy of Public Works, has been really wonderful about going out there and trimming trees and taking down branches and trimming back the grass and putting down new gravel for the animals. So the property is actually being used right now, which is really terrific. The reality is, this is the best site because everybody knows where Animal Services is. It's centrally located in Calaveras County, being in San Andreas. Ultimately, what we would like to see, or maybe I should say I'd like to see, is a shelter that's built into the environment, similar to the way you see Columbia College put together. Because it would be more friendly for our animals, especially for the fact of people being able to take them around, walk them, and that kind of thing. So, and then I would finally like to say, none of this could have been done, and even with the next item, without the volunteers, without the Calaveras Humane Society, and without the Friends of Calaveras Animal Services, and the staff. You know, our manager, who's been on board for a year and a half, has been working diligently to make improvements, and it's a lot of work, but there's some real gratification, and quite honestly, that's what's made this department a lot of fun. Who would have known? Rita and I have had this discussion many times. Is that I've never inherited a department with built-in community support, and it is phenomenal. So that said, we're proposing that this be dedicated for consideration for the new shelter.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Supervisor Spellman or Supervisor Callaway?
Well, now all of you could get your checkbooks out and contribute to the building fund. This is, as Supervisor Pani said, a wonderful public-private partnership.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'm overwhelmed. Really. I really would like to make the motion.
All right. Supervisor.
After you chit-chat with the public.
Okay. Supervisor Spellman, did you have a comment?
I just want to say thank you to Brian and his staff, and also the volunteer organizations that you mentioned earlier. They took a very proactive stance from the beginning once they'd identified that this was a site that would be not only feasible but preferable after considerable amount of, I won't say argumentation, but a considerable amount of research into where would be the best location. So I was very pleased, and I accepted the invitation. I took the tour. I was very much taken with the site location and the positive feeling that it generated. And I'm very excited about the future for animal services in this county. I think that our county has an opportunity to shine in so many ways, and this is one of them. And because of the hard work and dedication of people, government doesn't work if it's only run by bureaucrats. We need people in the community. Without that, it will function, but not as well. And it won't be the type of place that people look forward to living in. It'll just be open. But with the type of involvement that can be found in this county, and especially in this program, we can do a lot of marvelous things. So thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any public comments on item number 19?
Joe Kelly. I appreciate what Mr. Moss has done and the people involved in it. Ms. Callaway, you don't look the worse for wear if you had a pit bull on your back. No marks. I do have a concern. We go through these things and it never gets mentioned. That property, that 6.93, has a value of about $66,000 an acre. And the board at the time went back and used the tobacco fund issue, I believe it was, to borrow $7 million to compensate for the $4 million that was spent on the total property. So I'd like to know at this time, if anyone knows, how far along has the tobacco gone to pay off that $7 million that the county borrowed at that time, where $4 million of it was for the whole Opinski-Voorhees properties. Thank you. And I'm not against the project. I just like financials to be laid out, because it would look also as a concept of comparison to the other properties that might have been here. But I do like the concept that it's here on county campus, or county
County-owned.
land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other public comments on this item?
Marty Crane. I'd just like to say ditto and thank you so much to Brian, but we all know that there are many, many efforts and struggling things happening in our groups, struggling in our community with this issue and that issue, and none of it happens without the volunteers. That's absolutely the foundation, but the struggle is sometimes just overwhelming when we don't have leadership voice. Brian for leadership, and our Board of Supervisors actually hearing us and keeping it in the forefront and taking the steps to make things happen. So applause, applause, applause for our volunteers. We have volunteers all over the county, and thank you for showing other groups how it's done and how to persevere and get things done. And thank you to Brian and for the steps that we took to bring Brian into the picture with the Animal Services, but also encouraging our board moving forward to remember the other groups that are struggling as well and need your leadership and need you to help push them to the next level. We all build on what others before us have done. We've seen how our Humane Society, our volunteers have built on what others did before them, and now here we are today. It's a banner day for Calaveras. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Shirley or Brian, can you take the question that was provided to us?
I would defer to Shirley on that one.
Answer, or does that need a little bit more?
What Mr. Kelly was referring to were the certificates of participation that were sold in 2007. I do not know what exactly the principal balance is on that without accessing the county financial system. I can tell you about the annual payments are about $400,000 a year, which the tobacco settlement money covers. Also that it was a 30-year loan, so it will be paid off in 2037.
Okay. All right. No further comments. I'll entertain a motion, and I heard Supervisor Callaway make that motion.
Yes, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, to adopt a resolution dedicating 6.93 acres of Calaveras County-owned property for the development of the Calaveras County Animal Services Center, as shown on Exhibits A and B. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
A lot of work. Thank you. Item number 20 from Animal Services, approving the attached resolution authorizing the County of Calaveras to accept and receive modular units from the Friends of Calaveras Animal Services and the Calaveras Humane Society, and approving a lease agreement between the County of Calaveras and the Calaveras Humane Society. Brian, I'll defer to you on this item.
Thank you. This is a picture of the public-private partnership that's been mentioned this morning. And I can't think of any better example. This is an interim step that's being taken right now and being proposed before a new shelter can be actually constructed. Currently, as everybody is probably aware, the existing shelter was constructed in the early 60s. Thanks to volunteers, thanks to the Humane Society and others, it's been upgraded as it's gone along, but it still is what it is. And not only is it outdated, but it's a real difficult facility to keep clean. And we, even though we have wonderful staff and they're doing a great job, we try to avoid upper respiratory illnesses for the felines. the parvo for the canines, and the like. Okay, I'm a public health guy. I didn't know I was going to be doing animal health too, but it's just as valid. So the reality is what we'd like to do is accept 2 modulars from Focus that are being donated via Valley City Unified School District, Union School District. Very nice modulars that have been designed by the state architect that will be coming down the hill and placed where the Kitchell trailers were. We've got water and sewer and electrical already there. That will become the new feline facility. Okay, the existing shelter will become the canine facility. So your cats and dogs will be separated, thus reducing stress, especially on the felines. It also leaves more room for the canines. So it's a win-win. The modular coming from the Humane Society, which is coming from the Calaveras Unified School District, I want to say, out of Jenny Lind, will serve as their office. They will lease the modular back from the county. Ideally, what they will do, even before a new shelter is built, is maybe make part of that I hear something. Make part of that a spay-neuter clinic for the animals on campus and for the CHS animals. So it's really a win-win with the understanding that this is an interim measure only until the new shelter is built. When the new shelter is built, this all goes away. But it's a big step to get us as a bridge and as a stopgap measure as we move towards construction of a new facility for animal services. So thank you for your consideration on that, and thank you to Focus, CHS, and all the volunteers and the staff as well.
Thank you. Any board comments on this item or questions? Supervisor Callaway?
No, I remember we brought the first modular in, and Mr. Burns and I from Valley Spring, we were out there painting it. I don't know what you did with it. What did Animal Services do with that? Junked it?
I think it was before my time.
We thought it was pretty cool at the time.
It was, but it lasted for a long time, and it
Just sort of fell apart. I think this is just a wonderful ribbon around what everybody's been doing to bring our shelter into existence. And I know Focus has really worked hard on getting those. In fact, I think Ann Ellis was one of the people who kept nagging you.
Oh, yes, she's my CHS connection.
Yeah.
One of many.
And this is also wonderful, and I would very much like to be able to make a motion on this when you're ready, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Any public comments on this item? This is item number 20.
You are still.
You're older than that.
That's what I was going to say. It's Karen Elliott from the Humane Society. I thought I was going to die before I saw this day. I mean, it's been that long and that hard. And I want to thank you all, especially Brian and Henning, who are just stars. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Debbie Beaufort, Focus, the new Focus group. I pass this out. I'm not going to take the time to read it. It's everything that Brian said. We've started, we want to create a new cat house, okay? So, and it'll make all the difference in the world until we get the new shelter, because this is a dream that it's been going on forever. Ever. And I think almost everybody in this room is here because of it today. So if you want to go ahead and read this, I'd appreciate it. I'm not going to take your time. Thanks. And thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for the two previous ones.
I have one more thing to say. Marita, in your retirement, if you'd like to come on the CHS board, we'd love to have you.
Joe Kelly, well, on the government center yesterday, I ran into Mr. Moss, and he asked me something, and I started questioning. And then he did bring up the concept of a cat house. I looked at him kind of strangely. Wait a minute, what is the definition of a cat house? Well, he explained it to me. I had some concerns over the modulars. He took the time to explain everything about them, the construction of them, stuff that I could take to the bank. I want to thank personally the Friends of Calaveras Animal Services and the Calaveras Humane Society and all the folks that have been involved. They have done an exemplary job. It's now coming to fruition, and I would particularly like to thank Mr. Moss because his leadership in this county is tops. Thank you.
I'd like to see a show of hands of folks representing the Humane Society and Friends of. So thank you. Thank you for your work, and thank you for your commitment to this project. And again, it's nice to see the public-private partnership here. I do want to read into record the focus statement. It's been some questions, and I think Mr. Kelly kind of discussed about that. I think it would be important for that to be noted. So would you like to read it? Thank you.
Focus, FOCAS, or Friends of Calaveras Animal Services, is a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization formed this past year under the umbrella of Calaveras Community Foundation, or CCF. We are currently in the process of applying for our own 501c3 status. Focus's primary goal is to support animal services in maintaining a quality animal shelter and the level of services and programs necessary for our community in difficult budget times. Most members are already active in the animal community and see the organization is helping with acute everyday needs, differentiating itself from the Calaveras Humane Society, which is primarily concerned with animal adoptions and working toward the funding of a new animal shelter. We view animal services as an important part of public safety and health. To date, we've raised $24,000 through a series of campaigns and fundraisers, including a yard sale, memorial dog walk-a-thon, and most recently in being invited to participate in the Blue Oak Casino cash grab. We got $1,060 in 30 seconds. In partnership with Calaveras Animal Services, we have negotiated the acquisition of 2 surplus modular classrooms or portables from Hazel Fisher Elementary School and the Vallecito Union School District to be used as separate housing for cats at the animal shelter. Our county has never housed dogs and cats separately, and the stress of both living in close proximity leads to significant stress-related diseases and euthanasia. By separately housing cats and dogs, we hope to further reduce the need for euthanasia and increase animal adoptions. Having less euthanasia should also contribute to a healthier, more positive work environment for animal services staff, who are always forgotten, sadly. We envision these separate cat houses as places where the public will be more comfortable in visiting potential adoptees as well. Focus is covering the cost of the permits, the transport, and the installation of the 2 portables to the shelter grounds. We have retained the services of an architect who is working closely with all necessary county and state departments, and Focus has additionally engaged the services of a licensed electrician and other professionals who are donating their services at no or minimal cost for this project. So, Focus respectfully requests that the Calaveras Board of Supervisors approve the acquisition of these 2 portables by the county to be used as a cat housing as the Calaveras Animal Services Shelter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that helps to clarify questions that folks may have about this particular project and further supports the public-private partnership. Thank you.
Well, you know, we are talking about the cat house, but you never want to end up in the dog house either.
Yes. We're going to have a lot of fun with that one, I think, in the future. All right. Any additional public comments? All right. I heard a motion. Yes.
There's a mic in here, huh?
Yes.
Don Nuccio, Area 2. In my entire life involved with schools, teaching and administration, etc., I've never seen an organization that is so dedicated, so hardworking, so on the money all the time. It's a bit frustrating sometimes, you know, when it's supposed to be a couple days a month and it turns out to be 8 days a week. But the flip side of this is these people have done a tremendous amount of work, and anything we can do to reduce the fee burden that now will exist relative to this project, you can waive those. Let's waive those fees, make it easier for us to do this project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any additional comments? All right.
Just to clarify that, as part of that packet, you notice that we are requesting and requested the building official to waive the permit fees. So he was amenable to that. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's not the fees that CHS and Focus are paying for to actually move the modulars and set them up and get them hooked up, but actually the county permit fees.
Okay. All right. Supervisor Callaway, did I hear you make a motion to support this?
Yes, to accept and receive the modulars and to approve the lease agreement with the Humane Society.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it, and if Cliff doesn't want it, if it's in his, I mean, I'm just saying he doesn't want it, but so it's in his district, even though it's the whole county, but it is right down the street from his place, so I reserve the right for him to second it. If not, I will.
We're going to let our two outgoing supervisors challenge this. So we have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Spellman, to approve the attached resolution authorizing the County of Calaveras to accept and receive modular units from Friends of Calaveras Animal Services and the Calaveras Humane Society, and approve a lease agreement between the County of Calaveras and the Calaveras Humane Society. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
And the big thing.
I've been asked to take a 5-minute recess, so we'll do so and come back to item number 21. Okay, we're going to reconvene from our recess. We're on item 21. Okay. Reconvene. We're on to item 21. If I could. Okay, item 21. It's being brought to us from planning. This is adopting a zoning ordinance amendment 2012-004, implementing the general plan housing element program, finding that the ordinance adoption is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15061B3 of the state of CEQA guidelines. Peter, I'll defer to you on this item.
Good morning, Peter Maurer, Planning Director. This is an ordinance amendment, sort of an omnibus, but not a omnibus amendment that covers a wide range of issues that were identified in the 2010 housing element of the general plan. As we've discussed before, we're processing an update, need to get that done fairly quickly. We've had some initial conversations with HCD, which has to approve our housing element before it can become certified. And there are a number of items that were listed in the 2010 element that said we were going to do those. And so this is our opportunity to do those things we were going to do. Primarily, there are ordinance amendments that address certain things that are mandated by the state. We don't have a lot of flexibility in these issues if we want to have a certified housing element, which is explained is beneficial to the county. So the best thing to do, I think, is to probably turn to page 238 in your packet, which is the underlying strikeout version that shows the changes. And I'll just sort of walk you through what those changes are. Also on page 245 is a list of the specific programs and policies that we're implementing here. So the first change is an amendment to the definition of family. And this was something that the Planning Commission discussed at length it sort of flies in the face of what we all think of family is, but this is for zoning purposes only. So keep that in mind as you look at this definition. Basically, it's any group of people living together. It's considered a family, and this is a result of some case law that has come down in recent years that cities and counties can't discriminate against the types of familial relationships from a zoning perspective. So we've had a fairly simple version of the zoning definition for family here. There are 4 other new definitions that we're adding to the zoning ordinance: emergency shelter, supportive housing, target population, and transitional housing. These are all things that have come out of the housing element and state mandates for providing this type of housing for our community, members of the community. If there's any questions as I sort of go through this, interrupt me. I'm just going to sort of walk through the whole thing, but feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have specific questions on these issues. Minor modification to the uses permitted in the R2 and the R3 zone to add state license to the definition of group home, just so it's very clear this is something that has to be licensed by the state, not to say, hey, I'm a group home, because there are certain provisions that would apply in this case, and we want to make sure that they are licensed. The biggest section of this is really under the emergency shelter provisions, and the state law says that we have to have some zone in the county where emergency shelters are allowed by right. And typically you would think that, well, it would be something that would go through a conditional use permit, but because of NIMBYism in many communities, the state has said you can't regulate them that way. So what we've done instead is develop what we believe are reasonable standards that a shelter would have to meet in our county in order to be constructed. And this would be something that would just be reviewed at staff level. If you meet these standards, okay, you get your permit, rather than go through a public hearing process. So the C1 zone is amended to add emergency shelters, also the C2 zone, and then the standards in Chapter 1704, Chapter 1704, we've developed standards for the transitional and supportive housing, as well as the emergency shelter. And that's about 2.5 pages of different, 3.5 pages of different provisions of what we'd expect to see. And they address things like parking and access and management of the shelter, so that we know that these are going to be operated in a safe and clean manner and in a way that's appropriate for the neighborhood and doesn't adversely impact the neighborhood.
Peter,
Yes.
on that item, I didn't see where it addressed the number of people or a maximum. Was that addressed somehow on emergency shelters?
It's going to be based, there isn't a cap on the number of people. It's really going to be based on how much the site can accommodate. So,
Okay.
And someone's going to build a shelter, is going to try to size it appropriately for the community.
Mhm.
We're not going to have a 200-bed shelter because we just don't have that kind of
Okay.
need here.
Okay.
But it's so, they're going to have staffing for it. There's going to have to be parking, enough, restroom facilities, those kinds of things in order
Right.
to meet minimum code requirements. So there isn't a cap on it as far as the size.
Okay. I just, when I read it, it's just like looking at, when we've done short-term vacation rentals, we got very specific on number of bedrooms and family and that sort of thing. And I just didn't know with emergency shelter if that's something that would be addressed in this ordinance, or if it went through the planning process, if it would be determined kind of what the maximum occupancy would be.
It would be based on what is the site is capable of
Okay.
supporting.
All right. Thank you.
And again, as with any ordinance, if we find over time that this is not working for us, we come back and amendments we need to do. So those are the amendments that are proposed with this ordinance. Are there any other questions? Or we want to walk through any of the details of those. I'm happy to do that. I'm sure I had a chance to read those. and see what's being proposed.
Any questions from the board on this item? No, I enjoyed the staff report, I must say, and the Planning Commission's discussion about this item and kind of defining the family units and things like that. So it sounds like there was a lot of discussion at the planning department and Planning Commission level for this.
We did have a good discussion, and the Planning Commission did recommend, I believe unanimously, to forward this to you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this emergency shelter, when I first, hear the word, I'm thinking something along the lines, there's, a disaster in the community of flood or fire or something, and this is where large groups of people are going to be going to. And I see this emergency shelter as something else, not necessarily for that natural disaster.
Primarily intended to support the homeless population in the county, but it could be used in an emergency. Other
Depending
reasons,
upon
someone might
the
need shelter.
capacity of what it could
Domestic
handle.
violence, and things like that.
Okay, thank you. All right, any public comments on this item?
David Tuno, Rancho Calaveras. With respect to this definition of the family, if there's state law that for purposes of zoning, a definition of family has been established, I don't think that means that it has to be copied and pasted into the housing element of the general plan. There are lots of state laws on all sorts of issues that affect general plan, housing elements and whatnot. They don't need to be copied and pasted into the language of our plan. They just simply are applied when and if the issue comes up. There were a couple of other issues, and I confess to losing track of what has happened to the housing element, but there were two other issues that came up years ago that were topics of discussion. One had to do with the ability of a person who had purchased a parcel designated as single-family residence that has subsequently been redesignated multifamily. And the issue was, can that person still build a single-family home on that parcel? And the answer from our then planning director, White, I believe his name is, was no, because then that would take the parcel, the multifamily parcel, out of inventory from the county, as if the county owned the property and it has its own inventory of multifamily dwellings. So I'd like to know what happened to that, what has happened to that particular element, because it seems to be taking the property rights away from the person who bought it in the first place when it was zoned, with the previous zoning single family, and then that person no longer has the right to build the home of their dream home, so to speak, on their own property. And lastly, there was another element that had to do with owners of rental properties. And the language, I can paraphrase it pretty accurately, forbade the owner of the property from verifying the source of income for a rental applicant to that property. There was some argument given that that would, for example, discriminate against people who made their living on Social Security, when in fact Social Security, as any rental property owner would tell you, is golden for the owner of the property. That's secured income. But for some reason, it was written into the housing element, I guess by Minter Harnish, and we couldn't figure out a reason why that should still be in there.
25 seconds.
So if it is in there, I'd like to know whether or not that's been justified in some other way, and hopefully that you would not vote for an element that still had that requirement in it that also violates the property rights of the owner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. We concur with David Tuno's remarks, and we have some concern on expanding of government regulations which could bring about unintended consequences that would actually hurt its purpose. When people get in trouble, the ideal situation is a family would help them. That could be a number of things, including spousal abuse or drugs. We have several established facilities for people to go through rehab that have drug problems, and the zoning code is enforced by the planning department, and it's done under the theory of police power, government police power, similar to the sheriff. With that power comes a responsibility that to make sure it's applied in such a manner that they do not violate the constitutional rights of the property owner. And this is a very difficult position to be in, because sometimes the state legislature completely ignores not only the U.S. Constitution, Article 5 and not Article, but Amendment 5 and Amendment 14, but also ignores the first article in the California Constitution, which very clearly calls for the purpose of government is to protect those property rights. So as we move into a very complex arrangement, which is intended to make sure that these facilities are not mismanaged, and perhaps even that they are adequate in amount, I think we need to use caution as much as possible to prevent the unintended consequences of overregulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Yes, I'm Peter Race, Jenny Lynn. Couple hundred pages, and I don't need no life. But I want to give Peter a compliment. At least you bring issues, and I'm sure you all read every word of it, so maybe. But I do have a problem with definition of the family. To start with, Augustine Planning Association, I think there's a quotation, and maybe I'm wrong, but if not adopted, possible losing funding on a state grants funds. That's one thing. The other section over there mentioned that Planning Commission was limited to technical changes. Provision would be a minors, but to me, social values are not minors. And there was quoted over there that the attorney came up with certain courts upheld the elimination of families, family identifications, but I did not see what court, what jurisdiction, what was the central core of this litigation. This change of family description is not mandatory, I believe. It's not on 7 elements. But it's strictly for the sake of a possibility. If California has some grants to give out, we might miss out on it if we don't change the definition of family. And to me, first of all, look at it. Who's going to give you a grant? It's not identified. And another thing is that who requested this? Has somebody been discriminated against because instead of a family, they were checking out for the weekend, and it's not a family, just occupants? I mean, this goes contrary to just even today's political environment, because everything is based on family in many hot issues today. So it's not required, and you're doing it for the sake of you might get a grant, and if you don't get a grant, to me it's like a blackmail. I don't know who's doing it because there's no names really identified. Who requested this? Who's mandating it? Who said, I'd like to see the name, rank, and serial number of the public official to tell you, hey, either you pass it, you're not going to get a grant. I'd like to identify that person.
20 seconds.
The other thing is there's a whole bunch of hazardous waste was discussed here, and I'm sure it's going to be all handled very safely. But talking to some of the people in charge of that police department, sheriff department, there's some commitments to the sheriff's department. They have nothing to know about it. There's water districts, they will be required to approve and make sure they're going to be able to give the service and where and how. Changing parking lots. You're going to have parking lots for 0.4 cars per occupants. I mean, if you folks are fine with it, that's great. But these are little issues that kind of get flipped over. And this is for a whole county-wide commitments over here. It's public work. Fire department was committed.
Okay. Mr. Race, can you wrap up your comments, please?
Yes, ma'am. The fire department doesn't know anything about it. Are they prepared to give first emergency? Do they are equipped? They are trained to handle HIV and AIDS patients? So you made a lot of commitment just flipping over on behalf of a lot of elected officials, not just your staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this item?
Good morning. I'm Holly Mines from Railroad Flat, and I wanted to point out, and maybe Mr. Maurer can confirm, because I have to confess that I did not read the whole report. However, I was fairly involved in advocating for the completion and approval of the housing element during the last round in 2010. And so I just wanted to point out to the board that all of the items which he is referring to today were part of the policy document of the 2010 housing element. And as a matter of fact, I remember there was a little chart that not only named the various codes that are out of sync with the state code, but also there was a timeline during which each one of these should be completed. And if I recall correctly, almost all of the issues that were considered to be rather simple changes to the wording of our previous document to bring it into conformity with the state document said that those would be completed within 6 months of passage of the housing element. That housing element was approved in June of 2010. We're now in December of 2014, and these things still have not been addressed and approved. So we can talk about semantics, and we can talk about 0.4 cars, per unit. That is not countywide. That is not for all construction of all housing units. We're talking about places where people will be living who tend not to have cars at all. So I think we should be clear about the parameters of what we're discussing. And I was very pleased to be in the room to watch how the Humane Society discussion went, and how warm and cozy it felt, and how wonderful it was. That these animals are finally going to get, the dogs and cats will be separated, and this place will be healthier and safer for not only the animals but for the staff as well. So I hope we can carry that notion into this discussion and understand that it's really quite limited what we're talking about right now. And some of the issues that Mr. Tuno, I think that's your name, brought up are not really relevant to this and will be discussed at other points. But this is just a point of, a landmark so that we can move ahead with the housing element. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe Kelly, landmarks then become more than a landmark. They're unbreakable. I have a few questions. One I want to point out is public review. When this thing first came out, it was at the town hall first and then at San Andreas Fire Station during the budget hearings, and that created a conflict. Please try not to do that anymore and have conflicting meetings or reviews with other things going on. It would be appreciated. I would like to know about the shelters, transition, and target population housing. Are they going to be located where? Downtown, within walking distance of the needed services? I want to address another point. As Government Code Section 65302, which is triggered by the housing element in 2009, that law was triggered, and because it was anything after 2009, and our element was done in 2010, and this Government Code section pertains to flooding. And I don't think that having discussions publicly, discussing to go to Congressman McClintock or Congressman McClintock, Senator Feinstein, and Boxer are flooding discussions. I think we need to have open and honest discussions of the flooding in Calaveras County. I just went through, I'm going to be coming back to the board with more information, but I'm running through 1998, where it's very concerning to me as 2 people died in Calaveras County, flood-related death. That's bothersome to me. So, in this housing, we need to understand a whole lot of things. The other point I want to get on to is there was a comment of target population that can't discriminate. Visionary homes. When I started reading this thing, that's all I could read in there. Visionary homes. And mental health, $500,000, $600,000 for those 5 units that they wanted to spend, and that the planning department has had still, anytime they reviewed this and brought it before the board, we're all Twitter with trying to get this thing passed. You still do not have a housing authority. You have to have a vote of the people. You can't put that money anywhere that way. And the mental health rules state you cannot master lease. Visionary homes in their own rules have issues that discriminate. They won't let somebody coming out of our jail or out of prison go into one of their facilities to rent.
15 seconds.
So we have a lot of things to think about in this housing element and the general plan when it comes to play. So give it some thought. Thank you.
There it is. Colleen Platt, myvalleysprings.com. I just want to I think I understand that this is just to update our ordinance so that we can get our next housing element certified. That's all this is about. And then the things that have been brought up about the definition of family, again, this is just related to the zoning code. This isn't changing a broader spectrum of issues. And even so, it seems to me like it shouldn't be an issue to people, because this is actually less government interference in your housing family situation. It's less imposition of somebody's ideology of what a family is over somebody else's idea of what a family is. This is not expanding government. This is actually shrinking government here. We're eliminating that judgment as to what a family is. And I think this would be helpful to simplify this so that we can make it as easy as possible to have these programs, these housing programs go forward for needy persons in the county. Thank you.
Any additional public comments?
Frank Meyer from Habitat for Humanity. A lot of the issues that have been raised, I think it's not the proper time to discuss it, because what we're talking about here is this housing element that was agreed to by your predecessor board, yes, but that gave the county the marching orders to do exactly what the planning department is bringing to you, which is the implementation of it. Now, I'm not saying the discussions may not have any value. They will have when you start discussing the next element. And that's when all those things can be handled again. But this time, I mean, what's brought here is mostly definitions and minor adjustments. There's nothing mandatory that says you can only have a family that's not related to each other. I mean, like was pointed out before, it's a more all-encompassing definition that involves less force of law as far as defining what a family really is. And it is important to move forward on the implementation, because I think the state feels that we're not moving fast enough, and they'd like to see some progress, because they do have this hammer of not approving our next housing element, or even considering it if we don't follow through on what we've already promised that we would do. So we need to get our ducks in a row, as someone said. This is only the first step in doing that. And then we can talk about the new housing element this coming year and address these issues that have been brought up by both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any board comments on this item?
I'd like to thank Mr. Maurer and his staff for bringing this to us today. I look forward to making, giving my vote of approval. And I will say that I agree that these things need to be clarified for everyone's sake. I like the fact that this distinctly clarifies R2 and R3 properties, and it leaves out, R1, RR, RA, other those type of things like that, where these things really would not be amenable to the populace and my constituents in particular. I'm sure everybody else's constituents as well that have significant personal investments in their residential properties. And actually this from an enforcement standpoint gives an opportunity, once this is accepted, for our code compliance officers to perhaps deal with things that they might not be able to deal with correctly at this time if challenged, such as in Rancho Calaveras, where I live at, there's a number, smaller number, but there are several organizations of a religious factor or basis that are procuring properties and building what appears to be multiple family dwellings. This is very disturbing to some of the people that live in the area to see something go up next door to them looks like a military barracks, and they see large vans coming and going with, just some out of the ordinary stuff. And I don't know that currently we have anything that identifies or stipulates, what is and isn't considered. So for me, the information contained in this proposal today is refreshing, and I'm thankful for it.
Okay. So Peter, can you, some of the questions, thoughts, comments I heard were not particularly related to what you are proposing here in this ordinance, but I want to make sure we cover the questions that were asked.
Certainly. I think that several people have spoken to the fact that we're only looking at this ordinance amendment right now. We are not revisiting the housing element that will be coming forward in the next couple months. So the issues that Mr. Tuno and some of the issues that Mr. Reyes brought up, or Mr. Kelly brought up, really are something we'll need to look at when we revisit the housing element. Each one of these items are listed as things we said we were going to do, and Holly was right that we said we're going to do them within 6 months or within the first year after adoption. So better late than never, I suppose. We don't really have much else to say. I think there was one suggestion that we don't have to change the definition. I think that we run a risk of creating a potential conflict if we don't change the definition of family, that we could be forced to enforce our zoning code if a complaint were raised that someone other than the traditional family were living in a house. And if we try to do that, we would be going against state law, and that would create conflict for us. So I think it's better to recognize that this is what is currently recognized as a family unit for zoning purposes, besides the fact we said we're going to do it 4 years ago. So with that, I would forward my recommendation that we adopt the ordinance.
Okay. And these, what I understand too, these definitions are related to zoning.
Yes. This is in the zoning code.
Nothing else at this
Nothing
point.
else.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion one way or the other here.
Make a motion to accept it as presented.
I have a motion made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Spellman, second by Supervisor Callaway, to adopt the zoning ordinance amendment 2012-004, implementing the general plan housing element programs, finding that the ordinance adoption is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Peter. We'll move on to item number 22, which is adopting a zoning ordinance amendment to 2014-060 to section 17.04.200, development agreements, finding that the ordinance is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15061B3 of the state CEQA guidelines. Peter?
So this was precipitated by the fact that we had heard from a property owner that they wanted to apply for a development agreement and had worked on one here before, so I went back and looked at the ordinance to see what our process was and what was required, and came across an interesting provision that when we, according to our code, when we enter into a development agreement, we rezone the property to development agreement, which we've never done. We don't have a development agreement zone. So the code is currently internally inconsistent. So the initial thought on this was to just sort of fix that provision, relieve the base zoning, whatever the project approval is clearly outlined in the development agreement. You don't need to rezone it to development agreement. As I was going through that, I remembered that the former county council, Janice Elliott, had prepared a draft development agreement ordinance some years ago and had forwarded it to me before she left, saying, if you ever get a chance, it might be something good to do. So I thought, here's a chance.
Here we are.
So I worked closely with county council on revisions to that, and we've essentially updated the process and the requirements for development agreement. The one thing that I would recommend as your planning director, if and when a development agreement comes to you, is that you drive a hard bargain. You know, this is something beyond the normal approval process. And you know, what's in it for the county? Why should we enter into this special agreement and grant an applicant special privileges? What can we get out of this? So it's a fair trade. And this ordinance amendment, the ordinance revision, allows the county to hold a little stronger position when negotiating these agreements. And they have to be mutually agreeable. But there's no compelling requirement the county enter into a development agreement. So this gives us the position to negotiate, establishes a committee of internal county staff to work with an applicant to figure out what is in the county's interest. And the one change I might suggest, besides a couple other minor fixes, would be that we add to the committee the CAO's office and or representative. Because I think that CAO would be most likely on the pulse of the bigger picture of the county and what it needs. So that would be in, this is on the underlying strikeout version beginning on page 269 and on page, page 274 under section 1764.110A, add the CAO to that section. Supervisor Callaway noted that on 1764.140, we should add her, notice of her findings. There might be another female director one of these days. And another issue was under 1764.080, B, where it says the Board of Supervisors may approve a fee, and she suggested to me that should be will or shall approve a fee. This is existing language. It's already there. It's pretty much standard language for fee adoption. You don't have to adopt a fee, and it's typically not a good idea to compel a future board to do something. But this provides, we already have a fee in place. It's a time and materials fee, so whatever it costs us to negotiate the agreement, the applicant pays for it. So it's sort of a pro forma language that you have for establishing fees for projects.
But it's still the word may.
Yes, but it means the county may do it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I just think it should be tighter than that, because a development agreement goes above and beyond what is what happens during negotiations for a parcel map, for example, for a project. So then a developer comes in and says, well, we want to do a development agreement. And then when you have, and since it's above and beyond, I don't think the county should be absorbing any of those costs, even though we have, a way to charge for time and materials. But when we have the word may, I understand what happens in negotiations with development agreements, and it gets mixed up. And I think the board should know that this is above and beyond, and that if you want a development agreement, there will be a charge to do a development agreement, not a may because we're lobbied to not do one, which...
This isn't on an individual case-by-case, this is an establishment of a fee schedule. And so just as we establish a fee for a subdivision or a zone change or anything else that the planning department reviews, it's up to the board to establish that fee amount. And so,
well, this isn't discussing what the fee will be, only that there will be a fee. But, that's just my call. Depends on the board.
I'll leave it for discussion.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? So I agree. I think the word should be very strong that there will be a fee. And I really like the idea of the committee. My experience with it is that sometimes board members get lobbied, and then it's a developer agreement that the board member is doing on behalf of the county. And to me, that's a huge no, 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 no. I think the agreement lies within the staff to be able to come to terms with what the needs are, looking at the county, at the bigger picture. Perhaps the district supervisor in that particular area has a comment to be made, but I really would like to see these agreements look at the bigger, broader picture of the impact of these particular agreements and what it brings to the county. So I think the idea of the committee is good, and who serves on that committee with that suggestion is good, but I think there may be times where that committee may need to be a little broader base, or maybe more folks brought in depending upon, the intent of this developers, what the development is all about.
I agree with
but I like the provisions. I think they're stronger and they need to be. We want to be able to have an avenue for developers to come in and pretty much know what's going to be required. Any other thoughts or questions from the board?
I would agree with those comments.
Okay. Any public comments on this item?
Al Scallon, Planning, Calaveras County Taxpayer Association. I'd like to compliment our planning department this as well. Parts of this are really good in that once a development agreement is agreed to, it would go with the land and it wouldn't revert back to a previous zoning. That's my understanding of reading it. Some thoughts as to purpose we would offer a different consideration. The purpose of government is not to extract all it can from a person who wants to use their property. That's not right, and that's not really the purpose of government. The purpose of government is to protect those individual rights. As to charging a fee for a development agreement, that's reasonable. It makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that, and I can think of. The county should not be involved in extracting benefits from a developer. Should be more concerned with protecting the rights of the neighbors or the public. That is the purpose of government, not to bully a property owner because it's more powerful. So, incidentally, a development agreement is going toward the concept of having flexible zoning, which is a good thing. Here again, you've got to protect the rights of the neighboring property owners and the public. And this will help actually not only be the morally right thing to do, but also help our economy, because we could become more prosperous when people are pretty well assured they could do as they wish with their property, provided they don't hurt the neighbors or the public. So I would suggest that we look at this power and force of government rather than a means of exacting something from a property owner. Look at that force of government as a power to protect that property owner, protect his rights to build, protect him in his own dreams, even if not everybody agrees. So now, as to lobbying supervisors, I can't imagine anyone wanting to build something that would not want to communicate with the supervisors in advance before investing a lot of money to see if there's any hope at all. And also, in lobbying in general, there's a moral connection. If a person lobbies to use the force of government to extract something from their neighbor or the public treasury or maybe against their competition, that's bad. That's immoral. That type of lobbying is not good. If the person is lobbying to protect their own rights against either unreasonable governmental regulations or protect their rights against actions of competition or neighbors that want to attack them, that's good lobbying. So lobbying itself is neither good nor bad except as how it's applied. So as supervisors, I'd suggest that have your ears open and hear what every property owner that's concerned wants to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're making commitments on behalf of other elected officials that don't have to, let's just put it nicely, have to kiss anybody's butt at the taxpayer's expense. It's nice to have commitment, you're going to do this, but first of all, it's a chicken way to say it. We're not going to identify where we're going to do it, what we're going to do it. You're not identifying the fire department or any other place to give services to these areas. And basically our fire department is in bad shape. You're making bad shape financially. It's being ignored. It's not open. And to accommodate, and just like the last questions I asked, somebody failed to identify who is threatening you with a potential lawsuit on certain values, social values. The land use, which is in your diagram, does not affect the land use. And not to disrespect Peter over here, but I don't think he qualified to change social values. Also, I'd like to remind you, that is almost word by word what Methanish put in a few years back. You can change a couple of words, but it's still Methanish. I compared it to general plan. What's my social responsibility, etc. And I want you to bring it to you, God, that every one of those folks that was proposing in that, they're not going to be here come January 1st. Not one of them. You think it's a coincidence? Thank you.
Any further public comments?
Holly Munson. One thing that occurs to me in this particular discussion about development agreements, my understanding is that development agreements are usually made when a developer, a person with a large piece of property, wants to create a subdivision or a commercial area or something like that. I was on the Planning Commission briefly a number of years ago. I certainly don't remember any development agreements being drawn up with one property owner building a single-family residence or a home with an accessory unit on it. So somehow yes, we want to honor the rights of all property owners, but if one person has the capacity to build 3,000 homes or even 200 homes on a piece of property, that, to me, is a way of negotiating so that everybody will be protected around it, the neighbors as well as those who choose later to live there. So I don't see this as an issue of, like bullying people or taking their rights away from them or anything. It seems to me to be sort of a civically responsible way of conducting business and growing as a county. It's sort of a little checks and balances sort of thing. I don't see it as a bullying issue. So I think it seems like we could rely on the planning department to and always remembering that all of this is theoretical. This is not a development agreement itself. It's when somebody wants to build something, that whole process still has to take place, and everybody can comment on at that time. So I don't really quite understand what we're arguing about at this point. Thanks.
Yes, Colin Platt, My Valley Springs. Just basically want to agree with Holly and what our planning director said. He pointed out that this allows the county to hold a stronger position when negotiating, and that there's no requirement to negotiate. This is a favor that somebody's coming forward to ask. And what is in the county's interest? The county's interest is to protect the rights of the people of the county. Thank you.
Joe Kelly, I think Holly kind of answered or Ms. Mines answered the question as to that I would have, what project zoning land use is eligible for development agreements. I would ask if Castle and Cook at this time had a development agreement, would they be done with their project? Words do have meaning, and when you come out and you start discussing the issue of a development agreement and what's in it for the county, and having an internal staff committee and all this other stuff. This is bothersome. You've already driven a whole lot of builders out of this area. I have a dear friend whose whole life that's all he wanted to do was build homes. But because of the cost of permits in this county, he won't touch it again. So with that concept in mind, too, is the county then liable for its approval of a development agreement? And this apparently appears to be about fee schedules and defined codes and bigger, broader realizations. Well, I really don't see it. The big, broader realization I see is with this concept and you folks being able to come in and attach whatever kind of monetary fee to it might be a deal killer, where somebody might want to come in and put in a big complex that puts, large, big box stores that people can go to that will just then dump tons of money into the county for sales tax, even though most people wouldn't allow it, or what a lot of the people on the conservative or liberal side would not want it. But let's look at that concept of tax monies and the people's use of property. That's what we have to understand, because here's what I was trying to get at. Would a development agreement stop, for instance, Tom Infacino coming in and raising Cain with you folks and possibly suing you? Would it be that concise and controlled that it would have all the issues covered that nobody could come in and address on a legal standard? There's a big concern as to what it would do. But the biggest thing is this concept of every time we turn around, you folks are raising your fees, putting it farther out of the market. We're receiving higher cost of services, lower services applied.
30 seconds.
One word, inflation, the hidden tax. And that's what it is, and that's what you're being driven by anytime federal government, state government, county government, city government, any government gets involved in that. Thank you.
Any further public comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. So, Peter, to clarify, we have a developer's agreement avenue now. Is that correct?
Currently have, the ordinance is in place today, and we have several development agreements. There's 4 or 5 that are currently still in place. Castle and Cook has one for the Saddle Creek project. We reviewed, extended that a few months ago. What a development agreement typically does when you have a larger project that extends the life of a project out beyond the normal time frame, typically a tentative map is good for 3 years. And if you've got a project that's multiple phases, very complex, public improvements that need to be put in, roads and sewer and water and all those kinds of things, that the development agreement typically locks into place that approval for an extended period of time, typically 15 or 20 years. To a degree, it does protect the developer and the county for having to come back and revisit that project if it's not constructed within 3 years. The development agreements by themselves don't necessarily drive up the cost of the project. City of Roseville is a classic example that has used development agreements very successfully. Got plenty of housing there, and they have used those to provide additional public improvements, such as more parks for its citizens, driving down the taxpayer cost. So it's beneficial to the community to have these. It's beneficial to the developer to have a development agreement. They're not, because they're lengthy and time-consuming and costly to develop. Just preparing it for the developer itself is going to have to hire an attorney to work up the language. It's not going to happen on a very small project. So they're going to be the larger projects, and they're going to be the ones that will have an impact on the county, on the services and on its infrastructure, and that we want to make sure that the timing of improvements are done to coincide with the development, all the kind of things that we would typically negotiate as part of that. One thing that Supervisor Callaway brought up in an email to me, and Peter also talked about, was that we don't have outside entities involved in this committee, the fire district or the school district. Not that they would not be involved, but this is an agreement between the county and the applicant, not between some other agency. We would certainly include them as part of the review of it, and if there is some need that we felt that the fire station, we could put in to a development agreement something that an outside agency would want to have, and that we can negotiate with the applicant to provide for it. And there has to be a nexus between what we're requiring and the impact associated with the project.
And I see, in the purpose statement, it's further defined about that when it talks about utilities, schools, public safety, and then down when you mention content, the same items are being noted. So that's where I see a difference too, is that this revision just is broader base, involving more people, more agencies involved in the process. Some agreement may not impact the schools, so there's no reason for them to be included in something like that. And another project, the schools may be a big factor in that, and that's where they are. So I see that noted several times in the revisions that you're bringing forward, which I think is a good thing and more inclusive as we take a look at some future possibilities with developer agreements. More developer agreements. I know the county's had many in the past. I know the City of Angels has had them on multitude of projects, and it's just for a developer coming in, it's just more clear and concise about their responsibilities in regards to their project development. Any other comments or questions from board? Supervisor Spellman?
I agree with some of the comments that were made in regards to potential developers understanding the lay of the land. The overwhelming majority of people that I've talked to that either are in the process or contemplating in the last 4 years that have spoken with me about potential developments, they're not necessarily so concerned with whether there's a fee, no fee, how much it is, or whatever. Those are all things that they build into their fiscal planning and make a decision. However, the one thing that they don't like, that makes them go away running in the other direction, is uncertainty. Language that allows for there to be a hot potato toss here at the board about whether there's going to be a fee and how much or whatever, because that generates a lot of ill will and or can potentially generate a lot of ill will towards their project, towards their company, in the media, local newspaper, whatever. So they would rather just know up front that there's fees and what they are, and then they'll make a decision whether or not they want to develop here or not. One of the best case scenarios that I have in the last 4 years was that of the city of Ripon. The city of Ripon decided many years ago that there were a number of things that they were going to require. One of them was that all new projects going forward, whether they were commercial or residential, were required to have permeable pavers used for road surfaces, so that water could permeate into the ground, less toxins running into the system, and those type of things like that. So you have better rainfall saturation, and the life expectancy of a paver stone, is like 10 times that. And you want to talk about like things that run off. If you ever look at blacktop becomes gray top in about 6 years because all of the oils and tars leach out of it into the soil. But if you have a cement-based product they look like bricks, and they call them paver stones because they're cement products, but they have a life expectancy that's like 10 times as long as a blacktop road, and in the end will be much more environmentally suitable as well as more cost effective in the long run. It's like making a decision on whether you're going to put a LED light bulb in your house or a traditional bulb. The LED might cost more right now, but it's more efficient and cost effective in the long run, and it's more environmentally,
Okay. Any other comments from board?
Sure. So in the past year or so, I've talked to quite a few developers, and the thing that seems to be holding them back is the uncertainty of how things could change in the middle of their project. And development agreements, to me, is upfront, and they cannot agree. That's negotiable. That always is negotiable within the county. But it is certainly something that they know that if they start one way, it's going to finish the same way. And I've talked to probably 3 or 4 developers that feel that way, and that's one of the reasons that they don't like coming here, is because they're afraid of what could change in the middle of their project. And I think we've seen examples of that in the past. So to me, this is a pretty straightforward and good deal for that certainty.
Any other comments? All right. Entertain a motion one way or the other here.
I'll move to approve the motion.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor
Madam
Wright,
Chair,
second.
Just to clarify, there were 3 minor amendments. Does the motion include the change to...
Can you restate the minor amendments, Peter?
In section 64080, change may to will. Add the CAO to the list of members of the committee, section 110, and add the word /her in section 140.
Okay, motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Spellman, to adopt the zoning ordinance amendment 2014-060 to section 17.040, 200 development agreements, finding the ordinance is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 1506B3 of the state CEQA guidelines, as amended with the 3 minor amendments. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, next item. Thank you, Peter. Next item is item 23 with Public Works. Adopt a resolution modifying the criteria for acceptance of biosolids for alternative daily cover contained in the policy on acceptance of biosolids at the Rock Creek Solid Waste Facility. Hello,
Good morning.
Robert.
Robert Packinger, Public Works.
You can take that down if you
Slight
like.
disadvantage here. Let me just stand over here.
Your sweater matches.
Thank you.
There you go, Robert. Now we can see it.
This is Tommy Wilson. He's our foreman at the landfill, and he's here to answer any technical questions that may arise.
Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat, both of you there.
The focus of this item is on the criteria for acceptance of biosolids for use as alternative daily cover at the Rock Creek Solid Waste Facility. The current criteria is at 90% solids. We've had various times where this criteria and others have been discussed with the Board of Supervisors. In August, there was concern that the criteria wasn't exactly something that the local wastewater community can work with. And so we went back to the drawing board. I took a look at what's allowed by law and the permit, what's in our joint technical document. I discussed the issue with landfill personnel and the local enforcement agency, as well as with Mr. Bill Purley, who is, for me, a representative of the local wastewater community. The permit for the Rock Creek Solid Waste Facility allows us to accept this material at 50% solid by weight content. We couldn't use that as alternative daily cover. So the exercise is to determine what is that criteria that we can accept where the material is still usable as alternative daily cover. And after all the investigation and discussions and everything, 80% seems to be, or 80% is the criteria that we can have or accept the material at for the material to be used as alternative daily cover. If the material is too wet, it sticks to equipment, it spreads around on the by virtue that it's stuck to the equipment and you're tracking it everywhere, it's difficult for landfill personnel to handle it. California Code of Regulations requires that this material be kept away from the public. It's prohibited for the public to be in contact with this material. So we have to be somewhat careful when we handle this. So the way it's normally practiced when we accept the material during the dry summer months is that the material is placed on the landfill waste at the end of the day pretty much, and then the following day in the morning it's covered with garbage so that the material is not, so that the public is not exposed to the material in any way. So for us to work with this material at this point, we're making the recommendation that the criteria be set at 80%.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comments on this item?
Just a long question. I'm a city boy, so it's way above my pay grade. You're paying a big load of money to get rid of all the wood chips and everything out of here, this county, I believe. Is that would any way would help if you mix it with the wet waste to help that dry up per ton and etc.? Because somebody's making big money taking the wood chips out of here. And couldn't you utilize that locally? Because, maybe cut the taxpayers. I mean, I see the concept that we're going to have to raise prices, etc. And I'm sure you will. You're going to try anyway. But you have perfectly healthy waste from chips and leaves that people drop off. Is there any possibility to that? Is it healthy?
The thing is, the biosolids needs to be covered at the start of the next day. So at the evening time, we cover with it's alternative daily cover, ADC, and we're trying to eventually eliminate chips. We use tarps right now also, and we're trying to sell our clean chips for biofuel if it's cost effective. There's also a new thing we're looking into right now. It's an air curtain that actually incinerates the chips and makes a little pile of ash. So we don't have to pay for trucking costs. The trucking costs are outrageous. But on our own facility, we use those chips. If they're clean and we could sell them to biofuel, then that's great. But right now, to mix the chips with the biosolids, the loader's getting up on the shelves, it still would track on the wheels, and it gets in the tracks of the dozer. So then when you're backing up on the deck where the people back up to dump their garbage, they're stepping in it and they're taking it in their vehicles, which is not a good thing. So.
I don't care about your vehicles. You guys get compensated. You got no sympathy out of me. I'm talking about for the taxpayer.
Peter,
You know?
Mr. Race, address it to the board, please.
Yes, ma'am. As much as I appreciate what's happening to the car, man. Great.
Remember, when the equipment fails, that's also a taxpayer situation.
I agree with it.
Okay.
But we're paying a big load of money for the trips that I'm gladly doing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But is there any way, would it be healthy way and safe way to use that as a cover so you can put another load of garbage on it? Because per tonnage, it won't be as wet and heavy. Now, like I said, I'm a total city boy. And Water District already told me when I can flush one or flush number two. Thank you.
We do use chips, though. We do use chips for code.
Okay.
It helps degrade the garbage. I agree.
Any other public comments?
Yes, Barney Newman from Double Springs. I think it was last year, it could have been 2 or 3 years ago, time flies now. We were discussing a facility that might be created to process the biosolids and create a byproduct of potting soil or garden soil. And I haven't heard that since. Is that off, thrown away completely, or is that still a possibility for, because we're always going to have a whole pile of, what, that's one, renewable resource that we could possibly look as to create some kind of income for our county. I don't know how many people are on the sewer system and how many people are on septic systems, but we've got at least a dozen pumpers in the county that I've seen, maybe not a dozen, maybe half a dozen, different names of, Sweet Pea and all of these other places that pump septic tanks, to really put some ideas into creating a facility where maybe not only our own poop goes into, but other counties could be paying us to get rid of their poop and we could be selling it and having wonderful green gardens. That's my vision.
Any additional public comments?
That was a question, though. Is that idea gone forever?
We'll address. Any additional public comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. So, Robert, can you address the question proposed or posed out there about an additional facility or a facility?
Composting facility, basically.
Right. I believe that Supervisor Edson is behind an effort to try to put together some county-wide facility that would accept waste county-wide, perhaps.
Greenways, compost.
At this point, at this time in the Integrated Waste Division, we don't have any plans to do anything like that currently.
All right, thank you. Okay, Supervisor Spellman, you had a question?
No, just a comment. To, that last comment there. Actually, in just a few short weeks when I'm done here, I'll have a much better capacity to be able to work with the current board in maybe helping them bring to light or to fruition some of these things. And no, people haven't stopped working on it, but I can only say so much, and we can only say so much to each other about things without violating the Brown Act. So I know that there are a number of us that are doing different things in light of trying to bring something like that to fruition. One thing that I see Mr. Perley in the audience, there was a guy that came up from Napa about a year ago, and if you think about the way, I can't see flowers, you think about the way a solar project works, where you have the solar power and then it goes into the grid, and then anybody in the grid can pull it out, and you track that electricity going to the grid. Well, there was a guy that said he could take the septic waste and stuff if we had a large facility here approved, and they could generate gas and then put it back into the old pipeline that went to the cement plant. So basically you're generating gas, methane gas and stuff from septic products here, put in a pipe into the big pipeline, the old one, sending it back down to the valley. And this guy had an agreement with, it was you.
Mr. Spellman, I appreciate those
Oh,
comments, but
yeah.
let's talk
Okay,
about
a little
biosolids and 80% right now. So,
Yeah. But there is things you can do with them. That's the short.
okay.
No, we haven't stopped.
So what we have is adopting a resolution modifying the criteria. So the criteria going from 50% to 80% is what we can accept.
That's correct.
That's the recommendation. Any comments based on that recommendation?
No, that's acceptable.
Is that a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve with a comment.
Okay.
There's a sliding scale that goes along with that, and I know it's not here, but I think, Robert, you've agreed to do a cost analysis study on what it would cost to handle, because that sliding scale really is out of its. The product has changed since then, so it's out of context. And my fear is that we can't charge more than what we're actually supposed to on these, when we're handling something. So it's important. You want to explain your process on that, what you're going to do?
That's correct. We need to do an analysis of what it costs for the operations of handling that material as alternative daily cover. And as part of that analysis, we would need to look at this cost of whatever the landfill space is. That's something that we're going to be undertaking in the coming months. We hope to get it done before the summer, when we expect to receive that material from the community.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Callaway, you had a comment?
Mr. Packinger, we have dirt that we've used, chips we've used, and biosolids. So based on your staff report, what would trump? I mean, biosolids, it comes in, we have to use it right away, correct? So
That would be first. Whenever there is the arranged time that we would receive a load of the biosolids material.
So
that
how
would have
much
to,
do you anticipate the landfill receiving when you have other products or the canopy that you use for your ADC?
on a daily amount, we would receive
we
it.
could, I mean, if we knew it was coming in, we could save the space for it, to use it towards the end of the day, as long as we know ahead of time when it's coming in. It said, what was it, 15 tons per day is what it said?
Right.
So, I mean, I'm saying like 2 truckloads would be ample for us to cover each day, so, I mean, we couldn't stockpile a bunch.
So
of
if you
one-
receive it, you can't keep holding it on the site.
No, we can't have a stockpile of it.
You can't stockpile. I guess I'll take your recommendation for the 80%. The landfill is one of the best assets this county has. I mean, other cities and counties would love to have what we have at our landfill. And so I'm always very cautious about when you're now opening up the landfill to something else. It's not that we don't want to be nice and help our member agencies, but and with recycle, hopefully there'll be less in the landfill. But the cost of opening and closing cells, I mean, you still are going to have to deal with the $150 fee at some point. And this is a facility that we're hoping will last us the next 40 or 50 years. So, I guess I'm always cautious that when you want to do it, and if you think there's really minimal impact to the landfill, I'd support this too.
Yes, at this point, we don't expect any change in the operations of the material that we receive as alternative daily cover, or for that matter, the material that we would receive as waste. Because for years now, that material, the ability for the community to dispose of that material at the landfill has always been there. The only thing that we're really focusing on is what is that criteria, that we can all live with and accept for this material to be used as alternative daily cover. So if they want to bring it in wetter, there is no prohibition against that. It's simply that we just can't use it as alternative daily cover, and it has to be disposed of as waste material. So, and during the summer months, my understanding from speaking with Mr. Purley is, and the records have shown, past records have shown, this is not something that we expect to receive on a daily basis or anything like that. It's once in a while that we'll get some of this material, maybe a few loads, that from any one particular district that would be disposing of the material. I think in 2010, the Murphys district cleaned out their ponds, and we received a large amount of the material at that time, but that won't happen again for another number of years, so that's the type of thing that we face.
But that was special.
That was
And that
special.
came to the board for approval.
That's true.
Any additional comments or questions?
So one of the anticipations is that the agencies and the landfill will work together to create a schedule. And right now, nobody can really give you an account of how many tons or how much of it is actually processed in our county, really. So now we would be able to accurately do that, accurately use it as alternative daily cover. By the way, which would, if it turns out, which I think it will, if it turns out that the handling costs are lower than what the sliding scale is, I'm pretty darn sure that it will be, then it's not that we're giving anybody a break. What we're doing is we're charging what we're supposed to charge, and it's the right thing to do. Number two, it could potentially help the ratepayers of these districts, because now instead of hauling it out and paying what they're paying, I think they're paying 28 bucks a ton and taking it out of the county, which is where that money goes, out of county. It would keep that money in county, which is, to me, pretty valuable, and we would be efficiently handling what we should be doing all along. And so it's just becoming more efficient, operating in the way we're supposed to operate. It's not going to hurt anything else. Instead of dirt, you're going to use alternative daily cover as our biosolids as alternative daily cover. There's no difference. So I see it as a win-win all the way around. Gives us an opportunity to strike up a really good relationship with our water districts in the area and get that relationship going again so that we can actually be proactive in some of the things that we do.
Is that a motion?
I move that we approve.
You have a motion already.
Oh, I do?
From who?
From you.
Yeah. I move again.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution modifying the criteria for acceptance of biosolids for alternative daily cover contained in the policy on acceptance of biosolids at the Rock Creek Solid Waste Facility. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you for doing all that hard work, too, and listening to me.
Okay. Brian, how long do you think your presentation will be?
Presentation itself maybe 15 minutes.
All right. So I can take a break for lunch, and we can come back here at 1 o'clock, or we can complete the presentation and the rest of the agenda by 1.
Okay, that's fine.
We're going to take lunch.
Okay. We're taking lunch.
Okay, we're going to take a lunch.
Let's just do it.
I think I have a recommendation for most everybody to take lunch and reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Let's just do it. We're almost done. It's like 15 minutes. Let's get it done. Go home.
All right. All right. We're going to take a break for 5 minutes. Allow Brian to set up, and we'll continue.
I feel like crap.
I know you just
Otherwise,
Meeting and go on to item number 24 for environmental health.
Actually,
Health. It's a groundwater management presentation, and we have Brian Moss here to present this topic.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
And what I forgot to tell you this morning on the animal stuff is that I have Santa and his reindeer here. They're all missing teeth because they're all football players. So they're also grateful for board action this morning. With that said, some of you have seen part of this presentation before, so please forgive the redundancy. But
I've seen the whole thing.
But there's going to be part of this that's going to that I added to with the recent changes in the Senate and Assembly bills and the water bill. So, with that said, this is designed just to talk, since groundwater is such a big issue right now in the state. The regional board and the state board, as you know, RCRC, CSAC, everybody's involved in groundwater at this point. I went to a meeting down at RCRC about 6 months ago, and a comment was made by the state water board chair about, well, you know, our surface waters are dwindling. Thank you. Our surface waters are dwindling, but don't worry about it. We've got groundwater as a great reserve. And I'm just like, oh, keep quiet. And that actually resulted in a 2-page letter that I wrote for the board to sign and send off to the state water board, and you did, and also to the governor's office. The reality is, as people like Marita have heard me preach through the years, you can only put so many straws in the drink, and there's a lot of changes through legislation now, and we'll discuss that towards the end of this presentation. So the beginning of this will essentially be review. The board has always, at least since 1998, has really been aware of the need to protect water quality and quantity, groundwater quality and quantity in the county of Calaveras and our resources. The board's taken several actions through the years, since 1998 through 2013, in an effort to put tools in place to find out what's going on with groundwater quality and groundwater quantity. So as an example, and I won't read through these verbatim, you'll see that the well construction ordinance was originally drafted up in 98, passed by the board. Proof of groundwater standards pertain to land development. That's a big issue. In the past, we had people that were drilling wells down in the West County, and we have 1,000-foot dusters down there, and nobody was paying attention as to, is there water to support a subdivision? Those standards help put together measures that say whether there's adequate groundwater or not if you don't have a surface water supply. The local agency groundwater protection program was a kind of a joint effort with federal EPA Region 9, and the board passed a resolution allowing me to apply for that grant. That essentially built the groundwater protection program that we know today. A big issue back in 2002, pushed by RCRC, was this issue of people potentially extracting groundwater in a jurisdiction and putting it in a trough and transferring that water across a geopolitical boundary. So, Calaveras County and Calaveras County Board, along with many other jurisdictions, world jurisdictions, adopted groundwater management ordinances. And what this does is this ordinance is actually housed in the planning department. Should anybody ever decide that they want to drill a well into we'll talk about it in a minute, the tertiary channel system, okay, the buried channel, buried rivers, put it in a trough and send it to San Joaquin or Stanislaus or wherever. They cannot do that without coming to the Board of Supervisors first, and the Board of Supervisors actually issues the permit and makes a determination as to whether to issue a permit or not to issue a permit, but it is issued by the board. That hasn't happened yet. One of the things I want to clarify here, big issue in those days was, wait a minute, CCWD was talking to East Bay Mud, saying maybe we're going to take some water out of the McCullough and we'll put it into the ground and we'll bank it. It's called conjunctive use, making it groundwater, and therefore now you're telling CCWD that they need to get a permit from the board. Not true. Because when you take that surface water and you place it into the ground, it does not legally become groundwater. It is still surface water pursuant to state law. We can discuss that a little bit later. But so that turned out to be a moot issue. We did an updated version of the well construction ordinance in 2008, amendments to accessory dwellings and proof of groundwater standards in 2013. So we are not unlike any other of the mountain counties and rural jurisdictions, as we secure, obviously, a significant amount of our drinkable water from groundwater in the county. Okay, if you look at the map of the county and you see the utilities that serve the county, they're running up along the Highway 4 corridor. They're running up along the main corridors, Highway 12 or what have you, part of 49. But the rest of the county, where are they getting their water? And most of it's getting from groundwater. Even Mountain Ranch, the township of Mountain Ranch does not have a centralized water system. They have 3 small public water systems that we oversee as the local primacy agency for drinking water, but they don't have just one water system for the whole community. So that will happen probably someday, but that's what exists today. All the water for Mountain Ranch, as an example, is groundwater. So what's interesting, though, we also serve as a source county, right? We hear that all the time. You know, this year we went to stage 3 emergency. The state water board told the water districts, you cannot use water to wash down the sidewalks. You cannot use water to wash your cars. You need to do odd, even watering days in your yard. Okay? You can't fill your pool up. Okay? That's a problem, by the way, if winter hits and your pool pops out of the ground because you don't have the weight. But yet I digress. It was interesting because in September I flew into Orange County. When I was looking down from the plane, all the pools looked full to me.
Yeah.
Even the ones that weren't obviously not being taken care of. So
They don't have a water problem down there.
no, their reservoirs are full. By the way, Castaic and Pyramid Lakes have stayed full probably through the Central Valley Project, which is the surface waters from the north. So back to groundwater. Obviously, we obviously know it's geologically dependent. I'd say the majority of our groundwater is found in hard rock fissures. The tertiary channel systems, which are the buried rivers, I call that big water. And the East San Joaquin Groundwater Subbasin, which is a state of overdraft pursuant to Department of Water Resources Bulletin 118. That's important because the state is going to be looking at that subbasin in the future because of what's happening with the current drought. So some of you will remember the Darby fire that we had, and back in 2001, I want to say, and the City of Angels ran out of water. Remember that, Debbie? Yeah. They were able to access this mine shaft off of Dogtown Road. It's sitting actually on the central channel of the buried river system or the tertiary channel system. Why did they shut that gold mine down? They probably didn't run out of gold. Why did they shut it down?
Water intrusion.
Too expensive to pump the water out of it. So obviously, yesterday's gold in California was gold, and today's gold in California is obviously water. Just ironic. They pumped 500,000 gallons a day out of that mine shaft for over 30 days and dropped static water level only 40 feet. That's impressive. That's what I'd call big water. Another area where you might find a good chance of getting water is East San Joaquin Groundwater Subbasin. That's this area here. But what's happening right over in here, I don't have any water at all. In some areas, I might not have water even in the basin itself. Why? Because it's flowing through greenstone. Water doesn't move through greenstone. I'm not a geologist, but I know that much. So, real quickly, San Joaquin Groundwater Basin, critically overdrafted. This is the basin. This right here is, as you can see, is Calaveras County, right? And there's our park right there. That's our subbasin. So when the legislation comes into effect in the coming years, and we'll discuss that right at the end of the talk, how much do we have to say about this? How much does CCWD or UPUD or whoever have to say about this, or the county have to say about this when you're really talking about this? Okay? Who's really going to be in the driver's seat on that? We're affected. We're a source county, both surface and ground. But the reality is, how much say will we have? So there's just something for us to think about. Yes?
Brian, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything currently being proposed, or even that you've just heard of, in terms of being able to identify and monitor people that are tapping, doing horizontal, or you know what I'm saying? I've heard, especially on the west end, out by Wallace and Burson, there, that the South San Joaquin Irrigation District or Stockton East Irrigation, whatever, they're basically tapping some of that groundwater that goes over the county border into our jurisdiction. It's like a big pool under there. They stick the straw in on their side, but it's sucking out water that's on our side.
That's
I've got a friend who lives in Burson who has a 1,000-foot down duster.
Yeah.
He only gets intermittent water, and he had to let his pool go and his landscaping go. And so that's it. There's a lot of different concerns there that I have about that, and I'm wondering, is there any way to substantiate or know through sonic, type detection, whether or not they're intruding on.
My guess would be yes.
Our water.
I think you'd have to know the area. You'd have to have an idea as to be able to identify that, and that's clearly a water law legal issue that is a little above my expertise at this point. But I'm not surprised by that. I grew up in the Oakland Hills. The city of Oakland got its water from horizontal wells that were drilled into the base of the hills one time, called the Oakland Water Mines. So that's not a new practice. It's been something that's been done for many years, and they'll do it until they can't get any water anymore, or there's some legislation that says you can't cross a geopolitical boundary. So good point, Bill. Thank you.
Well, if you've noticed in the past 10 years, there's a tremendous more vegetation growing just across the county line.
Yes.
Just recently on 26, they have almonds and the brand new almonds and walnut orchards out there that are massive.
Yes. There's currently a lawsuit that was filed in Stanislaus County because of that action, and I can't remember who brought the lawsuit. It's still being heard at this point, telling the county down there, you can no longer issue well construction permits because this is a violation of CEQA. Now, again, that's in the courts. I don't know what the finding is going to be, but it's because of that activity of everybody sticking the straws down because I'm going to put in grapes. I'm going to put in almond orchards. Calaveras County, yeah, we have a few grapes. We know that. We might even have a few almonds. We have some olives. But we're not having really if you look at the big picture, I think that we're having just a minuscule impact. It's what's happening in the breadbasket of the United States and or the world, the Central Valley. That's the issue. So,
Brian, I had a question now that Coach Chris brought that up. There's a parcel of land, you're talking about geopolitical boundaries.
Yes.
And there's a parcel of land that is both in Calaveras County and San Joaquin County. And so what they're doing down there, my wife was asking about it, and because it's never been used for irrigated purposes before, but they're tilling and moving a lot of dirt down there, right at Hospital Road and 26. And if you look at the parcel, the actual legal parcel number, the parcel is in both counties. The county line runs through an edge of that property. So legally, I know there's surface water that comes from Tulloch that comes through a channel and it dumps out right there at Belota, and they use that for irrigating stuff down there. So anybody that's in San Joaquin County, on that east end of San Joaquin County, can use that surface water that comes to that agreement. Now what they're doing, though, is they're using the fact that that parcel has some of the land is in San Joaquin County, so they can get water rights because of that, but they're using it to irrigate not just the property that's in the San Joaquin. So if you look at the parcel, probably 20% of it is San Joaquin County, and 80% of it is Calaveras County. So once the water gets over to the Calaveras side of the parcel, who's to say they can't, I'm not trying to put a kibosh in their dreams, but I'm just saying, I want to know how that's going to affect going forward, if at all.
I think really what you're crossing over to surface water issues and surface water rights, surface water reservations. I will.
That's not groundwater.
No, but to support your comment and to support your argument, the board has also seen ag preserves, i.e. Williamson Act preserves, come through for approval that share parcels with both San Joaquin and Calaveras. That's nothing completely unusual. But when it comes to water, the only time we'd be concerned is if he's pumping water out on the Calaveras side and sending it across. Even though it's on the same property, I think that's more, again, a legal issue. But the way the groundwater management ordinance for the Board of Supervisors is written, they need to come and get a permit to do that.
Knowing the groundwater constraints down in that part of the county, I'm fairly certain.
I think you're probably right.
That it's surface water that they're obtaining through Stockton's irrigation.
That makes sense. Okay, since we talked about surface water, I'll just cover it just for a minute. Everybody knows that it originates in Calaveras County from the Stanislaus, Calaveras, and the McCollum River watersheds. This picture I took in May, I think, of June. This is up at one of the seeding stations for PG&E. You know your seeding stations. And we flew up there in their helicopter. This looks like a lot of snow, right? It's about 1.5 feet of snow. And that was, that should have been, the snow line should have been up here somewhere. This is going down the same time. This is probably about 4,000 feet. This is flying down the Moke River watershed. The river was running at about a third capacity if you looked at the high water line. Now, to get into some statistics very quickly, everybody talks about, we've got a lot of water up in Spicer Reservoir, as an example. We've got so much water in Maloney's, or whatever it happens to be. The reality is waterlogged surface water is a real tricky one. The real issue is something called firm yield. Okay, what is that? That is the maximum quality of water that can be guaranteed with, don't you love this, with some specified degree of confidence during a specific critical period. Now that one's easy. We're there right now. Thank God we've been getting the storms coming. Firm yield can be increased through rationing, recycling, and water conservation, obviously. But the reality is, on firm yield, this is the acre feet that are available out of our surface water sources as they go through the county. Again, we're a source county. That looks like a lot of water, but in reality, it's not a lot of water. So that's important to remember. Just because you've got 150,000 acre feet in Spicer Reservoir does not mean you have the right to access all 150,000 acre feet of that water. Okay? And it gets into what is called pre-1914 and post-1914 water rights, which are senior water rights versus junior water rights.
Brian,
yes.
When you look at that, it's not that much water.
No.
But how many, how far does 32,000 acre feet go towards household? How many households is that?
That's a really great question. I don't know what the average household uses. I will tell you that 2 acre feet is equivalent to about 1.28 gallons per minute in a well. That's not a lot of water. Sounds like a lot of water, but it's really not. And that's one of the things I'm fighting with the State Department of Planning, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research on right now. And we can talk about that because that has to do with new legislation. But in reality, the bottom line is that 32,000 acre feet means that's enough water to cover 32,000 acres with 1 foot of water. So that's what the real definition of it is. We are not using all this water in the county. We are not using this, especially for copper. Okay, we just don't. We have paper water down there that's being used, but it's not really being used. Bill Purley was here earlier today, and I think he's gone, but he could have spoken to that issue. And that's a real issue when it comes to land development. That's a whole land development issue.
I was going to say at one of our meetings when we were talking about McCollum Wildland Sand, I believe, if I remember correctly, there was an individual from, I think it was Jackson Irrigation District or something, and they said that the total consumption for residential uses in both Amador and Calaveras County combined was like 22,000 acre feet or something like that. So it wasn't a lot.
It's probably not a lot. Right.
And what you're talking about in Copper Cove or down there is the county's approved a lot of potential building to take place.
That is correct.
And what many people have been saying for a number of years is that we've been able to keep our water without people usurping the volume of it from us because we show that we have all these lots approved that are going to need it at some point. But at this point, with the drought going on multiple years, the state is saying, you know what, you use it or lose it type of thing, so it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, it is true. And what everybody needs to remember is that DWR, Department of Water Resources, is the one that holds the purse strings on how much water you can use. You may say you have the water rights, you may say you have the water reservations, but DWR is the one that's going to come out and say, you may have access to 20,000 acre feet on firm yield, we're going to allow you to use 10. So that's the other issue. And you also have to prove that you actually are using it, which is kind of what you're pointing at. Okay, just a quick synopsis on the groundwater protection program. As cited before, we wrote a grant with federal EPA. I think it brought in $75,000. Our match was a small percent, I think $18,500. I asked the federal government if they would allow me to use my existing well fees that I knew I could pull in at least that much revenue, because it is groundwater and groundwater related. Can I use that as a match? They said yes, so it didn't cost us anything. So we issued the report in 2004. It's ironic, because I've said this to the board before. This report is just as valid today as it was in 2004. Why? The geology is not changing, right? What's changing is the water level within inside of the geology, probably, but the geology is not changing. So the fundamentals kind of included the following. Track and identify groundwater resources through the county, track and identify possible threats to that groundwater quality, and of course track and identify possible threats to public health and safety as a result of contaminated groundwater. So using Geographic Information System program, we plotted and tabulated data. Okay? Now when you see a map and you see all the dots on the map, that looks kind of cool, right? And they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. The reality is the power behind the program is the data behind the dot. So if you look at the database that built that dot, that's where the power is in the program. That's telling you really what's going on. That's telling you depth to water. That's telling you water quality. That's telling you static water level. All of those things you need to know. The program covered all of these elements, of which I'm only going to cover and just brush on these three today. Okay? There's no reason to go through all of these. Interestingly enough, we also addressed groundwater that was impacting surface waters. So we had, between 2001 and 2005, we recorded approximately 1,900 wells with an accuracy of 3 to 5 feet. That's because that's what the GPS units were able to do. We downloaded additional 4,500 data logs from Department of Water Resources. We were looking for total depth of water, yield in gallons per minute, static water level, etc. Okay. Interesting point about this is DWR had all these files and they weren't doing anything with them. It's like, really, you guys aren't building a database with this? What are you doing? So the other thing that was really interesting is, as you've probably heard me say before, a lot of those wells were drilled at post office boxes. So meaning that when the well drillers drilled the well, they didn't identify a latitude and longitude of where the well was. They put the post office box of the property owner. So there's a lot of wells out there that are drilled at post office boxes. So we kind of had to throw those out. The power behind this, without going into the data that built it, is identifying average yield and average depth, okay? And you see patterns throughout the county. Here's the East San Joaquin Ground or Subbasin, okay? Average yield, it's somewhere between 30 and maybe 100 gallons a minute, depending where you're at. What's happening here? Got 0 to 1 gallon a minute. What's happening here? Campo Seco, 0 to 1 gallon a minute. Based on geology again. Just because you may be sitting in a pond of water, if you're drilling through a solid rock in that pond of water, you're not going to get water. And that's probably the most basic way I can say that. Same thing with depth. You expect an average depth in a true groundwater basin, and that's what you're seeing here. Okay? The rest of it is all over the map because these are fractured wells and these are tertiary channels. So, well yield in relation to groundwater potential, very important for land development. Again, looking at well yield and depth in conjunction with the exact location used for refinement of the groundwater potential map. So if I'm going to build a subdivision, I want to know where the groundwater is if I'm not served by a CCWD, okay, or a UPUD, or a City of Angels. I need to know where the water is. Again, this is vital information. There's no water out here. CCWD has a couple of taps. People drive out with their vehicles, with tanks on the back of their vehicles, fill them up at the tap and bring them back to their house. Okay? That's what's happening over here. That's not happening anymore with new subdivisions because now they have to show proof of groundwater. But in the past, that wasn't done, resulting in this. So again, if I want to look, this is just a theoretical parcel, okay? But it gives you true numbers, okay? All of these dots around here, depending on the color, shows you the yield. But it gives me, within a 1 mile here, I could say, okay, my mean is 297 feet deep, okay? Gallons per minute, the average is almost 38 gallons per minute. Depth to water is 203. So you got your mean, minimum, and maximum there. Very important for land use purposes. Very important. I can find there it is. And many of you have seen this before, but again, going back to the picture that speaks 1,000 words and just doing the flyover that you've probably seen 100 times. Again, Campo Seco, okay, no water. I got some really high yields down here. This could be tertiary stuff, okay? I got tertiary stuff happening up here too, Toyon, okay? There's no doubt we're dealing with tertiary stuff up there. As you get into the 3D model down here and you look at, wait a minute, all of that sudden, these are all about the same. Yield, same depth. That's the subbasin, okay? Here are your wells that are 1,000 feet deep and they don't have anything. Red dictates no water, and yellow is pretty darn close to it. But again, from the Amador side, looking at it, you can really kind of see how that pencils out. That data, these spots are actually built on real data. So it's not just a pretty picture, but it's reality. And we can do this throughout the entire county. Okay? Real quickly, small public water systems. We regulate that in environmental health. Just because I have good water availability, what about water quality? In Mountain Ranch, I got a problem downtown. See these two little creeks here? See those red spots? Those are water systems, but they're also contaminated water systems during the winter. What's happening? They're in a dolomite, and again, not a geologist. A dolomite, a limestone formation. What's happening is when those creeks charge, boom, I'm contaminating my water at a very deep rate, very deep depth. So significant depth. But I have a water system up on the hill here. It's in the same formation. Doesn't have a problem because of the proximity to these channels here. And these are surface channels right here. So you can kind of see that depending on the geology and the topography, how it influences what's going on for your water supply. So again, underlining geology directly affects groundwater availability. We know that. Quantity and quality is directly affected by underlying geology. This is the Hodson Fault. Okay, we do have faults running through the county. I'll just discuss a little bit more about that in a minute. But just to give you an idea, we do have faults running through the county. All right? And it shows the geology. You can see the subbasin here. Okay? You know what? Well, we also found were saltwater wells. That kind of ties in with these fault lines, by the way. And it definitely falls in line with the geology. So I have saltwater wells in Valley Springs. I have a lot of saltwater wells in the Salt Springs Valley. Can you imagine that? I've even got them up in Angels Camp. Okay? And I will tell you, the well drillers will tell you, in an area like this, don't drill below 350 feet. If you don't hit water, you don't hit water. If you go deeper, you might hit water, but it's going to be brackish. So the best story is this is an aerial of Royal Mountain King Mine. This is North Pit. This is Skyrocket Pit. What did they do when they were mining for gold here? They intersected the fault line. Okay? So where did they find the gold? At that break. Okay? And so not only did they run into different chemicals, what they ran into were two different salts once they got deep enough. But what was really interesting, depending on which side of the fault line you're on, depending on whether it was sodium and a chloride, or it's a magnesium and a calcium. Two different types of salts altogether. So, all bets are off. But it kind of gives a really good picture of what's going on down there. These were taken on a year that we actually had rain. This is the Salt Springs Valley. These are where generally you're intercepting that salt around 350 feet in depth. What you're seeing here is actually the salt coming to the surface in the springs, i.e. the Salt Springs Valley. We have another one too up on the McCollum. Everybody's familiar with this site. This is Copperopolis. Okay, the gold mines, copper mines go back to the Civil War. All right, copper was generated from the Civil War, I think, and through World War II. I want to say 4 different mine sites. Okay, little problem though. I've got tailings out here, and I've also got adits that filled full of water. They're in a geology that has extremely low pH, and when I mean low pH, I'm talking about acidic. Okay. Really kind of fun. I walked out here on a road one day. I picked up a nail that had been coated in copper, just laying in the ditch from the water running over it. So you've got a lot of copper, you've got gold, you've got silver. You've also got a lot of acids. Okay. So you notice as you look along here, this is the old milling site. Okay. This was a sed pond. It breached, filled up this sed pond. Down here you look, and I'll show you this a little bit closer. Nothing's growing in this. Okay. This is Burns Ferry Road right here. Nothing's growing in this. This goes into Black Creek, goes into Lake Tulloch, which, oh, by the way, is a drinking water supply. But with that said, the regional board and the state board, and everybody's aware of this site. So eventually, at some point, that's going to have to be cleaned up. And the reality is, it's huge. So you can't look at the property owners and say clean it up because you own the property now for what they started back in the Civil War. But this is a great example of groundwaters. Now they're impacting surface waters. This is a Penn mine site. These little sticks here are 8-foot posts for a cyclone fence. The site is in passive remediation, means that they've spent all the money on the really hard stuff. And what they've done is they've created a hazardous materials landfill out there and some other things. But on a good year, when the adits fill full of water, you find the adits by looking at the side of a hill. This is water that's just leaching out of the side of a hill. It's acidic. It's killing everything in its path. So what they did is they put limestone in these draws, which is what I call bucket chemistry. Because what they're doing is they're taking the acidic water and they're putting limestone, caustic, and it brings the pH back up to more of a neutral stance before that goes into the McCollum River. So what they're doing is they're treating the water passively just simply by letting the acidic water go over, erode the limestone. In the meantime, the limestone is bringing the pH back up to more of a normal level. Okay, into the modern stuff. 2014 Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The state is in a panic. We don't have any water. The snowpack's disappearing. We need to look at groundwater. So on September 16th, Governor Brown signed a package of the 3 bills known as the Groundwater Management Act. It was SB 1168, SB 1319, and of course AB 1739. The bills were designed and are designed to provide a framework for improved groundwater management by local agencies, not the state. So the governor also signed AB 1471, and I don't know if people were really paying attention when this was happening, but it placed the Water Quality Supply and Infrastructure Improvement Act of 2014 on the ballot, which of course was passed by the California electorate in November of 2014. Provides $7.195 billion in water improvement and infrastructure expenditures. This is one of the things where I'm working with RCRC and CSAC to say, can you throw some monies to the small counties in addition to everything else you're talking about to help us reinitiate our groundwater program? Because the groundwater program, we've scratched the surface. It could be an ongoing program. The more data you get, the more accurate it gets. Okay? So I've been working with RCRC and CSAC separately on that. I actually approached the Governor's Office of Planning and Research on it as well. But we're discussing different items with that office as well.
What kind of money are you looking for?
Well, specifically for Calaveras County or local jurisdictions like this, I would be happy to take about $90,000 a year.
For Calaveras, $90,000.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see to come in for, and that's not part of the regular program for some of the things we're going to have to do with the CCWDs of the world. Okay, that's different. It's a different issue, but it does fall within inside the overall umbrella there's a couple places where I can make that request and it actually makes sense. Will I be successful? I don't know, but I'm giving it my best shot. So, the three bills that we talked about for sustainable groundwater, really what they act established was the definition of sustainable groundwater management, established local agencies like CCWDs and counties. In the past, AB 303, AB 3030, really those monies, those grant monies went to the districts. They did not go to local jurisdictions like counties and cities. That has CSAC and RCRC did a good job to make sure you're going to do this, you've got to make it available to everybody. And that's good, especially for us, because we work so closely with CCWD. And I keep saying CCWD only because although we have several large water utilities in the county, they're the ones that have done a lot of work down on the Mokelumne and the Calaveras and lower Calaveras River, so watershed. So it makes sense that we would be working with them on some of this. The other people can, of course, come to the table. We've talked about that before. Prioritizes basins with the greatest problems. Well, I would guess that the East San Joaquin subbasin is a high-ranked basin, okay, because it's a state of overdraft. And it sets a timeline for implementation of different things. These are those things. And part of it is groundwater sustainability agencies need to be formed. Groundwater sustainability plans must be completed. And then you can see all the way out to 2040 to 2042, high and medium priority groundwater basins must achieve sustainability. What they're basically saying is they're saying we don't want the Central Valley to continue to lose elevation. In other words, it's because of overdraft, you're having subsidence. You're also having saltwater intrusion coming into the groundwater basins, especially in the San Joaquin groundwater basin, because of overdraft. So they're finally saying, somebody's got to do something about this. The important thing is to remember this, and it hasn't changed yet. Nobody owns groundwaters of the state. Not like surface water, different animal. Nobody owns groundwaters of the state unless you're in what they call an adjudicated basin. So the reality is when I have one neighbor who complains to me that his neighbor drilled a well and his well just went dry, I'm going to sue him. Well, good luck with that because he doesn't own the water and neither do you. Water law does not support that. So if you hear that complaint, you've got the answer now. Sustainable groundwater management is defined as use of groundwater in a manner that can be maintained during the planning implementation horizon without causing undesirable results. Undesirable results, again, means, any of the following effects caused by groundwater conditions occurring throughout the basin. Again, that's subsidence, that's saltwater intrusion, and all of those factors that come along with it. So I kind of rushed through this presentation, and I know I covered a lot of ground. As you can see, saying now just hold your horses, everyone. Let's wait and let the water run for a minute to see if it gets any colder. That does kind of look like California until at least the last few rains. So with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Brian.
I'm just scratching the surface, by the way.
It's just not fair to answer the questions while you're doing your presentation.
Sorry.
Okay.
Are there any questions of Brian from the board? Any public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. Needless to say, and I'm sure this is not news to everyone, this drought we've been in for the past 3 years is not going to be the last one. We're going to have another one in California, I'm sure, or this is going to continue perhaps. I don't know. I can't predict that. But one thing I know, as was stated earlier by Brian, was that water is now turned into the gold, as probably everyone's aware of. The value of water is just really significant. And the impositions imposed by both the water district here in this county and the DWR, State Water Control Board, really was an eye-opener for a lot of people. We personally, my wife and I took all the overspray while we showered and collected it in a bucket and took it out and watered the trees with it. In the same way in the sink, when we had surplus water, excess water, we collected it in a bucket and we took it outside and watered the plants with it. And I was talking with Brian a few weeks ago about an article that was in Sunset Magazine about 4 months ago where they indicated that there was a homeowner who built a recovery and recycling system of the gray water emanating from his house. And he did all this, the labor was his, but he did all of it, including the tanks and filters and piping and so forth, for under $1,000. And he was using the gray water, the filtered gray water, to water his landscaping and his garden. And I think that this is an excellent idea, and I think if you may be aware that there are some cities and counties that are offering rebates to people who will put in a gray water recycling system in their home. And much like solar energy, you build your solar apparatus on your roof or wherever it is, and you will get tax credits, you will get rebates, and that sort of thing. And I think the same should be considered for collection of water and distribution of the excess gray water out onto the landscaping.
15 seconds.
I beg your pardon?
You have 15 seconds left.
Oh, that's right. You got the watch, huh? Well, at any rate, I want to emphasize that it's not too early to be thinking about your plan, because the $7 billion, even though it sounds like a lot of money, you want to put your request in as early as possible. And by the way, CCW about 6 or 7 years ago did some research out in the west part of the county on wells. They went out and measured them and so forth. They got 2 grants, $250,000 each. And they did some research on the drop of well water, and maybe that's available to you. You can utilize that.
Thank you.
You know, something that was just brought up there was the gray water, and I will tell you about 5 years ago, Housing Community Development, State of California, adopted and passed gray water standards, so you can put those into the ground now legally. Okay, that's not the same thing as taking a washing machine and running a hose out onto the lawn. Okay, there actually are plans. The problem with it is, the only con to it is they're expensive to put in. They're like a miniature on-site wastewater treatment system. Exactly. You have to have a pump tank. You have little emitters. I think the emitters and the lines, drip lines, need to be a minimum of 2 inches under the ground, et cetera. So that is actually happening, and that was done by HCD.
Thank you. Public comments?
Joe Kelly, as usual, Mr. Moss puts on a class act. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
That's good. It has given me, gives me grave concerns. Discussion of the well records, DWR, what time frame did they provide records that came in the county? Because this county, last time I checked, did not have record on my property. And Brisky, I checked with them, they had it, but somebody else had drilled it. Now they can't find the information.
Great question. We started the well program in 1998. So at that point, we have records for well completion reports, is what they're called, from 1998 forward. What we did when we went down to DWR, we looked at stuff that was pre-1998, going back to probably, I'm thinking the 50s or 60s. So I didn't, my staff actually pulled the records, but if your well was drilled before 1998, and I think we probably had this conversation, then DWR would have that record, but we wouldn't.
But you just claimed you pulled some records from them, so you don't have.
We did, but it's just as a database.
Oh, okay.
So it's not. We don't have the actual well completion report itself. It would be in a database.
Okay, so
for lat and long and depth.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, in the discussion of the waters, is this? I've been trying to figure out why this county has not grown and why it stays the way it is, and I keep coming up against a wall and coming up against different things. But should this be giving the board and all of us concerns in this county for development and agriculture development, meaning someone that's going to come in and plant grapes olives, and any of the other nut trees, pistachio almond, and I can't think of the third one, walnut. Walnuts take a lot of water. So should we be looking at this type of thing? And we do have certain things. We look at our housing development stuff, but should it be looked at even a little closer to, I'll use the term micromanage if necessary, so that we don't have a water problem? And should we be, as Mr. Edson's looking at, a watershed plan? Yet CCWD has already done watershed plan, management plan, and I've offered to COG something in my floodplain, and Mr. Edson's coming up with something. And so, what do you think? What do you think we need to do, in your honest opinion and your not necessarily your official capacity, but your knowledgeable capacity? I would be more concerned about that. Is how do we go about and work to make this thing work, and where do we draw the line at population?
Well, good points. And I think that's really where the groundwater sustainability plans come in, and the groundwater GSAs are formed, and the groundwater sustainability plans come in. I am a little bit less concerned at this point about the tertiary channels and even the hard rock stuff. It's the subbasin that's an the state of overdraft that the state's going to be looking at. But does that mean that we shouldn't be looking as well? No, we should be. We should be finding out again, and that's one of the purposes of trying to get some monies from the state, so I can upload this program further, because the more data that you have, the more accurate it becomes. In other words, does it make sense to put in grapes or walnuts or what have you in an area that's in zero to low groundwater probability? Doesn't make sense. You really want to look for surface waters. Now, if you're tapping into a tertiary channel, all bets are off. If you go down Highway 12 and you see that big tower, water tower that's up there, that was all part and parcel of the timber company, as I understand it. But the reason they have a big clear well that big is because they're tapping into the tertiary channel. That well produces about 300 gallons or 400 gallons a minute. And that's probably because that's what the turbine pump can only pump. Okay. So,
one other question on wells is, wells that were drilled in, say, the early 2000s, and they're sitting there. They're not being used because the development hasn't gone on.
Correct.
Is there a possibility of change in that gallon per minute that was drilled in? So how is there a need for the regulations to go back and, well, I don't know if they can go back, but somehow coming forward with a construction permit that it then requires a pump test?
Well, right now it's an individual property, no. But if it's for a subdivision, yes. They need to do the 24-hour pump test with the drawdowns and measure that over the 24 hours. So they need to demonstrate, or if you're doing even even a small subdivision and you need to show 5 gallons a minute over 24 hours or 7,200 gallons, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can't meet that, then you need to put storage in place, which is never a bad idea. But this helps so people don't walk into a property and say, oh, everything's fine. What is that big tank doing there? And the other side of this is that the state, like I stated before, is talking about limiting people to 2 acre-feet a year for groundwater. That sounds like a lot of water, but when I reverse calculated it, it was like 1.28 gallons per minute. I went, that's nothing. And I was on the first call a couple of weeks ago with the state, and I kind of brought that up and then shot a few zinger emails off as well. I don't know if I'll be invited back. But the reality is somebody in Sacramento said, how many acre feet? 1, 2, 2 looks good. Wait a minute. Just take it 2 more steps and find out what the real gallons per minute is. And, what about the small ag users? Now, public water systems, they're in a different category anyway. But what my concern is the state coming in saying, and the big issue has been for years, somebody's going to come in and monitor my well, my individual domestic well. My comment would be, if that's fine, but I don't want to be the guy that does it. and we would certainly fight that. I would recommend that this board take an action and say, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, we're not going to go out and monitor individual wells. But the other side of it was Joe's comment, is that you still need to know what you've got out there so you can make good planning and land use decisions.
And I would go a step further, going back to what we have in this county under the old general plan of everything that they didn't know what, the past boards didn't know what to do with, they threw out as 5-acre minimum, future single-family 5-acre minimums. And that would cause I believe that would cause a problem in a whole lot of places. So hopefully that with the new general plan, the housing element, all the elements and the general plan coming up, that this information that Brian's presenting will be a point, the point of determination, I guess I would use that phrase, to determine what the heck we're going to do in this county, because we could be wandering around in a few years with no water for a lot of the people here and a lot of expensive property sitting there and being worth nothing. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? Well, Brian, thank you. This was good information, and this item was information only, and I know you worked long and hard, and I appreciate the information.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. That was good.
You know, I have lots of thoughts about this, but not at this point. I think the presentation was a good starting point to get some further communication and working with other agencies on this.
Great.
And appreciate the grant that you have received, and hopefully we can get some monies out of this bond that was passed to help continue, because I think I think our biggest problem is accurate information.
Yes, exactly.
And we need to get some information on this. Everybody's pretty protective of their wells.
Absolutely.
So,
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Check your email.
any other comments? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, item 25 is for board member announcements in compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 532.32.3. This is the time for board members to report on meetings attended on behalf of the county and to carry out their duties as a supervisor. So, Chris, I'd like to start with you. Nothing to report. And Supervisor Spellman?
Just one brief positive comment. Sometimes what is overburdensome policy adopted for the general mass of people in the state becomes advantageous for a small minority. In the case of Assembly Bill 1826, which I'm doing some work on, that requires for recycling of organic products from commercial entities, such as restaurants or other things like that, or a business maybe like the one you're involved in, Debbie. It requires that they do specific certain things with the organic waste going forward instead of landfilling it. But one of the caveats in that was fought for by our rural legislatures, like Assemblyman Bigelow and others, was that rural counties and companies based out of rural counties would not be subject to the onerous constraints that others would be. It doesn't mean they got off scot-free, but they have a different set of standards. But if you read closely on the amendments to the bill that passed and was signed by the governor, they give caveats for businesses that are located in rural counties. That doesn't mean that all of their business takes place in the rural county. That just means that their headquarters or the main operation is located there. So it may be a situation where we can attract perhaps some good paying jobs for somebody to set up their home office in our county so that they're not subject to some of the laws required by the new AB 1826 that goes into effect, I believe, April of 2016. So, a little bit of positive, perhaps if the board sees to it or wants to put that on their agenda for a later date in terms of trying to be proactive in sending letters to perhaps some of the companies that would be affected most by these and potentially relocating their corporate headquarters to Calaveras County.
Supervisor Callaway?
At the LAFCO meeting, we approved the sphere of influence for the McCollum Hill Sanitary District. There was no change in the boundaries with annexable sphere that's outside the boundaries, and inside the sphere, it's their irrigation field. And what's planned for 2015 is doing sphere of influence for all the CSAs and the road CSDs. And hopefully the drafts will be out by June 2015. I have a Murphy Sanitary District meeting, an Area 12 Agency on Aging meeting, a Central Sierra Child Support meeting, and what you talked about, the recycle program. Yeah, for second, yes, right. I did listen to.
I can't see him because of
I can't
plans.
see them.
Yeah.
The PACE program, if it's approved by this board, that would probably be an eligible program, and that'll be coming to the board sometime next year. I also want to thank all the staff of Calaveras County government, whether it's been adoptions to zone changes, for being a partner with me and helping me be supervisor for District 3 and all of Calaveras. I thank all of you.
Thank you. Supervisor Edson?
Sure. So yesterday I had I'll go from the 10th. On the 10th, I had a meeting with the vets, the library, and Mary Zawicki called a meeting over there, and it was in regards to their VSO, Veteran Service Officer, and some misconceptions and also some facts on what exactly the services that are being provided for the veterans. So it was a interesting meeting. There was some folks that were pretty strong in attendance, and but I think overall it's good because it gets it off everybody's chest. It's out in the open, and now we can start working towards a resolution. And I think that that's exactly what we're going to do. That was at the library. EDC meeting, same day. It was great meeting, actually. I felt like they were starting to move forward. They have a new program that they're going to be offering for business owners, which would help them be found for people that are on the go or traveling. And it's a really simple, neat website. Basically, you go punch in burrito, and it'll tell you everywhere you can get a burrito in Calaveras County. So, yeah, and the closest one to you. So I'm going to make sure that I make a lot of burritos. but so it could be anything, what you're after, and that would help a lot of people actually. If they know that they can just go to that site and punch in what they're looking for, some people may not know they can buy it local, and it could be right around the corner from them, and they really don't know unless you can find it easily. On the 11th, went to the mandatory training for workplace harassment and sexual harassment, and I was offended, but that's okay. The instructor said that the bar in Murphy's was better than the bar in San Andreas. That was offensive. So everybody in the room, I think, was going to go to Murphy's and not go to San Andreas. But that's okay. We'll get them next time. But it was good. It was actually a really good training. And, in each of those trainings, you go in there and you think, I already know this stuff. But then you find something new every single time. So it was good time spent. On the 12th, I had a very good pleasure of going to Arnold with Marita. I met her at the parking lot in, what's the name of that place you live in? Oh yeah, Forest Meadows. And so she drove. She's a pretty good driver, I got to tell you. And so we went to went up to and had lunch at Susie's restaurant up in Arnold. Great operation, pretty, really neat people, and got to spend some time together, which I truly appreciate. And we stopped at Little Trees. I ain't going to tell you why, but Not really. I was just there to look at their operation, and very, very clean operation. I was really surprised how they track everything so closely. It was a very, very nice and well-organized place. On the 14th, which was Sunday, I attended a funeral in Valley Springs for Ed Anderson, and or his services anyhow. There was a lot of people at that little hall was packed, and so that was a good showing. Veterans, of course, always do their own right and put on a good presentation of what they're all about. On the 15th, which was yesterday, I had a meeting with Peter Maurer and some representation from Congressman McClintock's group about FEMA. And let's see, who else was there? That's right, Shirley was there. I mean, there was 5 of us. It's hard to remember everybody. So, and I'm going to let Peter make the comments on the outcome of that meeting.
Afternoon, Peter Maurer. Actually, there's been 2 meetings with relation to FEMA. On the 10th, staff met with representatives from FEMA, and they agreed to do what we've asked them to do. Caveat being they have to get approval from headquarters. So essentially they will replace the awareness flood zone mapping with 3 separate studies. There's a 13.5-mile stretch of waterway that they've been studying. There's the LIDAR and the Atkins mapping. It will be about a year to a year and a half process. They'll have to hold a series of public meetings, go through all kinds of noticing requirements, but it's what we've been asking them to do all along. They finally agreed to do it. I think the letter helped. Then, as Cliff mentioned, we met with Congressman McClintock's staff yesterday, and when they heard that, they were pleased to hear that as well. They asked what they could do to help. We said, well, if you want to write a letter in support of that, that would be great, which is what they intended to do. They were going to tone it down a little bit because they initially thought that FEMA was not cooperating. Now that they appear to be, they're going to try to make it a little more positive spin. But they'll also be prepared to jump in with both feet if headquarters doesn't support the regional staff. So I am hopeful. I don't expect to hear back from them until January confirmation. They told us a couple of weeks, so with the holidays and everything, I suspect sometime in January we'll hear. So I will definitely keep you posted, and without trying to be too Pollyanna-ish, I will be hopeful that they will live up to their word. Good news.
Could you just describe a little bit about the process that we were talking about that normally took a surveyor to challenge?
So if someone is currently shown as being in the flood zone on their map, they have to get a letter of map amendment, which requires them to hire a surveyor, demonstrate that they're at or above the base flood elevation. It's an expensive process, $1,000 or more has to go to FEMA. There is a new, I don't know if it's new, but we've been using it, but they are promoting it more. And with this new mapping, we'll be able to utilize it on a wider basis. It's called an out-as-shown statement. So we can demonstrate at our level that the location of the building is out of the map area, even though it may appear just on the map itself that it's in the floodplain. But we can document that it's out. It's a simple, free process for the applicant. Deborah Lewis in my office has prepared several of these statements, and so we can use that a lot once this other mapping gets adopted. So it will still show many property owners with flood zones, but it will be accurate information as opposed to the inaccurate maps, or more accurate. It's never going to be perfectly accurate, but it will be much more accurate. And we looked at some of the maps, some of the draft maps that they prepared. It clearly shows where you're in a narrow canyon and there's an incised drainage, that the flood zone is a narrow canyon, not a big, wide, broad thing that goes 40 feet up on the hillside. So, again, I'm hopeful. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
All right, so at this point, I'd like to thank Peter and the staff for taking this on, in the middle of the general plan update and all the other stuff that they're doing. This has been a really contentious issue for quite a few years, and to get it down to accuracy is what we've been after, I believe, all the time. And so I would say that we can't, there's no promises until they approve it at the federal level, but it certainly looks like we're starting to get some movement out of FEMA now at the local level anyhow, so that's really great. Thanks to your staff. That's one thing I would like, I'd like to make, I'd like to put on the agenda for next time that we add a service resource officer to the Sheriff's Department, specifically for the schools, and that we put together an ad hoc committee that would develop a program around what that would look like within the county. Because right now we have a number of students at the schools that are, there's a lot of good students, but there's a few students that are going to end up costing us a lot of money within 5 to 10 years, and in triplicate. So sure would like to have some intervention in the schools, and so I'd like to put that on the agenda for next meeting.
What do you want on the agenda? To establish a committee?
I want to vote for a service resource officer and to establish a committee.
I would recommend that we would wait until at least after the mid-year report so we can see where we are in the current budget year and what it's looking for in the future budget year, because right at the moment there is no designated funding for a school resource officer, and to identify that, it really would be important to have that financial information.
Okay.
I make my request.
Well,
So
we could discuss the all the merits of that. I mean, because one of the things that I had a discussion with the sheriff about was in the past, like in my district, the West Point area, could really use, we have one for the entire region, basically, huge geographic area. We have one resident deputy up there. And he basically spends a lot of time down in, wherever he gets called to, which could be San Andreas. And it's really far from West Point. So I've always wanted to have another resident deputy up there instead of a school resource officer. So I'm not sure if that's exactly and maybe it is what we absolutely need the most, but I would like to have a discussion around the list of priorities from the Sheriff's Department for deciding on a resource officer midstream. So I would like that discussion would be a good discussion to start having. So maybe we could put that in the agenda if we could.
I made my request.
Mm-hmm. Right, I know. And then I countered your request. So with the
it's just in discussion. We can't really. I'm just making my request. I guess it's going to be a discussion anyhow. So.
Yeah.
I think at this point, because we're closing out the year and we have 2 supervisors leaving and 2 coming on board, that probably would be a more appropriate request to look at in January. And
that would be January, though.
Right, but our meeting in January. We're going to need 3 to put anything like that on the agenda for discussion.
You don't want to discuss it even?
I think it's really too early to tell. I would agree with Shirley right now. See where we are midway through our budget year and take a look at that. I don't know if a school resource officer or a resident deputy in the West Point area is what's necessary. I would hope that the sheriff comes back to us with some information on what his needs are. Maybe it's not even a deputy.
Right. I think, but that would be a discussion to have that we could have on the agenda.
Right now I don't support anything like that on the agenda.
No discussion about it?
Not right now.
What about the ad hoc committee? Have a discussion about that?
Well, sure. Can always have an ad hoc committee.
So do we need to put that on the agenda? Before,
That
or
would
can we
be
just have an ad hoc
agendized.
committee and decide?
In order to create an ad hoc committee, yes, it would need to be agendized.
Okay. So you're good with that?
We'll establish an ad hoc committee.
Put that on the agenda?
We'll
Okay.
put that on the agenda to look at the sheriff's department and be able to determine what level of staffing and
Yeah, maybe just
What
have a better
level of-
communication that goes back and forth between the board and the sheriff's department, so we're all on the same page.
I think I heard that back in
We were gonna
Back in
develop
June.
an ad hoc committee.
I think there was going to be better communication.
Well, I mean, maybe
I
if we
recall.
have an ad hoc committee, then it would be better.
Perhaps. Okay, so we'll look at an ad hoc committee. Agenda item in January. Yes, Supervisor Spellman.
It just reminded me that I do have a request for an agenda item in January, albeit I won't be here. But the request stems from a meeting with the new supervisor-to-be. He and I met with a group of people recently, so I'll need to speak with Mr. Maurer maybe later on today if he has time. But this would be on the January 27th agenda, I believe. Yeah, January 27th, which is the fourth Tuesday. And, there will be a public meeting to fulfill that requirement this before it. So basically, we have a homeowners association in Rancho Calaveras. There are some things that are in their project there that are not compliant. Things that are out of whack with state law, such as stipulations about accessory dwellings and other things like that. That it just needs to be cleaned up. So it's really the board accepted in 1999 is the last time. So I mean, as you can imagine, there's a few things. So myself, the new supervisor, a group of people from the HOA met, and we're gonna, it's just very minor, just to correct things to be in compliance with state law. So probably need to meet with Mr. Brower, and then if we could. Mr. Kearney will be the supervisor, obviously, at that time, but he's asked that, just so we can get in the queue, that I asked it be placed on for January 27th.
What is the actual item that you would like to be presented on the 27th? It's not clear, since an HOA is a private entity. What is the county, what are you asking staff to bring back?
I'm not asking staff to bring back. The Board of Supervisors already approved in 1999 Rancho Calaveras special plan. And that is, it basically just reaffirms the rights of the people that live in that area. And subsequent to state law, of course, I mean, you can't be out of line with that. So people are concerned. They want to make sure that gets, cleaned up.
So am I hearing you that it's an update to this specific plan?
It's an update, less than 2 paragraphs. But most of it's actually just line through, like stuff that's not legal anymore. It's very minor. I can give you a copy of it. And there will
Why
be
don't you share a copy with Megan, and we'll see if it's
Yeah.
And plus Steve will follow.
Yeah.
appropriate for...
Steve will follow up. But I mean, I told him, he said, well, how long does it take to get in the queue? And I said, well, the minimum of 2 weeks, but you want to give yourself a little more than that. And we do have to have a public meeting for the homeowners to look at it and, make sure that there's nothing that, that they'd like to try to add to it.
Okay. Okay, I attended an EMS meeting last Wednesday. At that particular meeting, they approved the American Legion ambulance agreement with Amador County. And also, they are moving ahead with the mid-level or advanced level EMT class, as you heard, and they did have to postpone because they didn't have a number of applicants. They had 9. They like to have 20. And I think it was a special acknowledgement, too, to the Mark Twain Hospital for their grant funding to purchase the equipment necessary to get this class going, as well as to help pay for the fees for folks to take this level of class, which will, in the end run, help our emergency response team out in the field with various fire departments and ambulance companies and such. So I had asked them earlier to come and make that plea today to encourage more people to sign up and get the word out. So that was the work of the EMS. And I don't have any further business. Megan, do you have anything to offer or provide? Nothing? Shirley? Diane?
I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, since we won't be seeing you until our next meeting on January 13th. And I wanted to wish Supervisors Callaway and Spellman the best. We will miss seeing you here.
Okay. Any public comments on these items? Okay, seeing none, meeting adjourned. See you next year. Oops, I'm sorry. Peter, did you have something else?
Well, I just wanted to give
I
you a
thought
little
you wanted to
update
get up
of
and run.
where I would like to, but
We have one more comment from our planning
I am
director.
still hopeful to have the draft general plan out this week. It's getting closer.
Okay.
But it's also my time window is narrowing down. If it doesn't, I'm going to be out of the country leaving on Friday. Won't be back until 29th.
Okay.
So if it doesn't get out Friday, it'll have to be January, and I apologize. I'm underestimated all the little details, all the loose ends that need to be cleaned up.
We're looking for quality.
But we're close. We're really close.
Thank you, Peter.
So get back to work now. And Marita and Darren, it's been a pleasure, my short tenure here so far, and we'll miss you guys. Thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
If I could get like 30 seconds,